Yo, everyone! Anisama Recaps is back! Our old channel is gone, but we're starting stronger than ever. Subscribe, like, and join us as we rebuild. Now, let's jump into today's recap.
A booming voice echoes across the heavens calling Mumayong's name. Our guy flinches and trembles on the ground under the force. He believes this command descends straight from the heavens. Then the voice orders him to protect the child. Cheon Wigong stands resolutely to keep young Cheon Muriang safe behind him. That's when he learns that safeguarding this child is his sole purpose. And this command comes directly from Cheon Wigong himself. Now Mumayong drags himself up the massive stone steps toward them. He stares straight up, ready to accept his destiny. Mumayong drags himself across the stone courtyard in torn clothes. He truly believes he has finally found his life's purpose. Cheon Muriang watches from the stairs while hiding behind a heavy robe. At this time, everyone knows the child as the clan's eldest. So Mumayong looks up at Cheon Muriang to show his duty. But our guy is unaware of the truth back then. Cheon Muriang trembles as he clutches the fabric. This child standing before him is about to change everything. And Mumayong watches the young heir, unaware of the coming darkness. That child grows up to bring ruin to the Cheon clan. Mumayong prostrates himself on the ground and swears to obey every command. 15 years pass after he makes that fateful promise. Cheon Wigong passes away and leaves the clan in mourning. After this tragedy, Cheon Muriang's reckless behavior grows worse every day. The prestigious reputation of the Cheon clan withers away like cheap paper. So people abandon the fallen clan to save themselves. But Mumayong chooses to remain by Cheon Muriang's side anyway. He dedicates his life to fending off every threat as his escort. Our guy stands firm with his sword drawn to shield his master. Two mysterious figures stand waiting just outside the open doors. Mumayong gasps as a cold blade pierces straight through his chest from behind. Looking down, he recognizes eldest young master of the Cheon clan as his attacker. Our guy wonders if this sword is the only reward for his absolute devotion. Trembling, eldest young master of the Cheon clan cries out while holding the weapon in place. Then Mumayong collapses to his knees and grips the sharp blade to hold himself up. He coughs up blood as his strength quickly fades. Kneeling in defeat, he realizes some people can never be changed. Assassins march through the courtyard and leave a trail of dead bodies. An eldest young master of the Cheon clan stares at his trembling hands as a cloaked figure looms behind him. Without a word, the executioners continue their relentless advance. Mumayong leans heavily on his sword and coughs up blood to stay upright. Spitting out a mouthful, he weakly calls out Cheon Muriang's name. He glares and asks Cheon Muriang if he expects to be spared by sacrificing his ally. Off in the distance, the shadowy leaders of the assault watch the scene in silence. That's when this guy asks if joining hands with the demonic cult is truly how the ruined clan survives. Glaring forward while battered and bleeding, Mumayong coldly declares that they are wrong. Then a group of mysterious figures walks calmly while holding dark umbrellas. One intruder grins like he just won a prize. Beside him, another monstrous assassin looms silently over his helpless victim. That's when eldest young master of the Cheon clan shrieks as the threat closes in on him. Our guy points out that they never should have let those monsters inside if they wanted to survive. An elderly warrior roars and raises his weapon to strike. Cheon Seonhak runs away in terror as Cheon Wigong lunges from behind. But Cheon Wigong swings his massive blade down and sends him flying. Blood drips from Mumayong's face as he regrets ever serving Cheon Seonhak. Then tears mix with blood as he wonders if the patriarch is watching. That's when he realizes Cheon Seonhak was never worth protecting. He collapses backward and wishes he had abandoned that worthless piece of trash. And just like that, a memory of Cheon Muriang flashes before his eyes. With a heavy thud, he hits the ground as his life fades away. The weapon clatters onto the wet ground as our guy collapses to his knees. So he groans in denial, refusing to accept his grim fate. Now several hooded figures slowly approach him with their weapons drawn. Our guy looks up with a blood-stained face to meet his end. Instead, he only wonders who is left to blame for his demise. His vision blurs as he stares blankly ahead and admits he only has regrets. A quiet peace settles over him. Next, he remembers he originally had no name. Years ago, he was just a ragged, nameless Sermon child standing alone in the world. And everything changes once the patriarch of the Cheon clan takes him in. Since that day, he goes by the name Mumayong, meaning nameless. At the end, a memory of a distant sunset plays as his consciousness drifts away. Mumayong stands alone in the downpour. Then, he stares up at a blade while his life drains away. Now this guy wishes for his own name in his next life. But assassins strike at once and plunge their blades into him. And he wishes to never be reborn as himself again. That's when his hand goes limp and drops his sword. So the nameless one takes his final breath and dies. A freezing chill washes over him in the darkness. Soon, warm water washes over his feet. As he opens his eyes and spots a dark-haired maid, our guy bolts upright with a shriek and startles her. She scrambles back and demands to know what is wrong. Instead, Mumayong just stares down at his body in silence. Actually, he gasps to find himself alive. The memory of cloaked figures driving swords into his flesh returns. Right away, Woolyong weeps and begs for forgiveness while promising hot water. Mumayong acts confused and asks if she is Woolyong. She is his childhood servant who endured constant abuse. Then, Mumayong asks what sin she committed and why she calls him master. Confused, Mumayong wonders where the real Mumayong is. Woolyong looks up in confusion and hesitates. Finally, she explains that Mumayong is actually Cheon Muriang. Fingers trembling, Mumayong touches his face to process his new reality. Mumayong sits up quickly in bed as Woolyong kneels nearby. Staring into a water basin and looking out at the estate, he realizes this is no dream. But he cannot explain how he returned 15 years into the past. So our guy sits on the bed, trapped in the eldest master's body. That's when he asks Woolyong if anyone here is named Mumayong. Bowing low, Woolyong replies she has never heard that name. This confirms he is now Cheon Muriang, and his old self is gone. Mumayong now has the perfect chance to protect his clan. He has 15 years to find a way before their destruction. Looking around, he notices his bedroom is incredibly shabby. The space is barely larger than a regular trainee's room. Then something unexpected catches his eye. That is when he remembers the legendary sword forged to cut darkness. This prized weapon belongs entirely to him now. The reality of his situation finally sets in. Slowly, our guy draws the pristine steel blade from its sheath. The weapon vibrates in his grip as he lifts it. This blade is on a different level than his old weapons. Stepping forward, Mumayong swings the blade with a sharp grunt. He shifts his weight awkwardly to execute another strike. Drenched in sweat, he raises the sword for another go. Then he groans as his legs buckle under the strain. That is when he collapses to the floor and retches violently. Just a few swings push his body to its limit. Later that night, he sits cross-legged on his bed to meditate. This body should not be this weak, even without training. Usually, energy gathers in the dantian to flow through meridians. But as Mumayong tries to focus, Mumayong inspects his new body and finds his internal energy completely scrambled. Blocked energy sits trapped in his core, unable to reach his pathways. These clashing forces constantly tear apart his core and pathways. Sweat drips down his face as he recognizes the symptoms. Rich kids often get this after taking powerful elixirs the wrong way. This dangerous condition is known as gold spoon chi deviation. Shouts of exertion echo from the clan training grounds. Disciples train diligently in the courtyard, practicing their sword forms in unison. A wooden sword strikes one disciple on the head, making him cry out in pain. Dropping to the dirt, he rubs his head like it might split open, asking who spars with full force and complaining his skull feels cracked. Smirking down, his opponent retorts that Mumayong would have hit him even harder, telling him to stop whining since Mumayong promised to win with only one hand. Clutching his head, the disciple yells that the round is void and tells everyone to shut up. His opponent turns around, staring in confusion at the sudden outburst. Nearby, our guy practices his swings, drawing surprised whispers from onlookers who wonder if it is really him. Disciples gossip among themselves, noting it is his first time here and questioning what the good-for-nothing is up to. Out of breath, Mumayong laments how out of shape he is, finding the wooden sword too heavy to swing. Deciding training is impossible like this, he walks away while the others mock him for giving up so fast. The disciples sneer as he leaves, muttering that nobody likes him and telling him to hurry up and get lost. He decides his immediate priority is to start running to lose weight. Other disciples watch him pass by with wide eyes. Our guy sprints right through the middle of the training grounds, drawing stares from everyone. Onlookers stand together, silently tracking his progress as he continues down the path. One man notes that their target clearly has no intention of leaving the clan. Nung Ryoun agrees, repeating the thought that the heavy air truly plans to stay. Now he resolves to take matters into his own hands and force him out. Mumayong slams his foot down and forces his body to move. He pushes forward while gasping heavily F or breath on his run. Our guy struggles to breathe and realizes his body is in terrible shape. But he keeps running despite knowing childhood elixirs ruined his body. Instead, those legendary medicines clash inside him like a toxic poison. Gritting his teeth, he curses his past lazy self for neglecting his training. Now he must prepare his body before learning the Cheon clan martial arts. Then several blades fly straight toward him without warning. A heavy blow strikes him directly and makes him groan in pain, as a real sword slams into the wooden pillar behind him and shatters it. Mu Maiyong stands silently staring at the sword like he just saw a ghost. He cannot believe Nung Ryowon is actually using a lethal weapon. Nung Ryowon offers a fake apology, claiming his sword slipped during sparring. The nearby men laugh amongst themselves, enjoying the blatant disrespect. His laugh echoes as he revels in the intimidation. Mu Maiyong frowns as he realizes what kind of people they are. But the other disciple warns him that these training grounds are incredibly dangerous. He mockingly suggests our guy stay hidden to avoid another accident. Our guy stays silent, his gaze hardening contempt, thinking a useless parasite has no business here. And he feels certain his threats will send the target running home. So Mu Maiyong shouts a fake apology, causing them to be surprised. He then offers a quick, insincere apology to ease the tension. He scratches his head sheepishly, thanking them and promising to be careful. Without another word, he jogs away while they watch him retreat. The men burst into loud laughter, demanding the loser hand over the bet money. Eager to spend their easy winnings, they head off to grab a drink. He stands alone in the courtyard grinding his teeth. Cursing Mu Maiyong under his breath, he hurries away at a rapid pace. Mu Maiyong grits his teeth at the despicable warriors mocking their master. But he holds back because he is no match for them yet. That's when he brushes it off to focus on his real priority. He needs the Cheon clan's secret martial arts from his past life. Those coveted techniques must be hidden deep inside the Heavenly Dragon Library. As the eldest young master of the clan, he has every right to enter. So our guy runs toward his destination as fast as possible. Chuckling with confidence, he expects his status to get him inside. And soon, he arrives at the grand Heavenly Dragon Library. But his expectations shatter, and he cries out in disbelief. Sweating profusely, Mu Maiyong demands to know what the guard just said. The guard firmly repeats that Mu Maiyong is no longer the successor. This sudden demotion means his entry to the library is blocked. And just like that, the guard flatly states his entry is officially denied. Now he stands powerless at the bottom of the steps looking up. He stares at the grand library like a kid locked out of a toy store. Slowly, his legs tremble as he turns around for the humiliating walk back. He collapses onto his floor with a heavy sigh. This guy sits in absolute silence, staring blankly at the floor. The cramped, rundown room finally makes sense now. Without his young patriarch title, he has absolutely nothing left. Mu Maiyong reflects on his failed plan to absorb the elixir's energy. Since the library is closed, he must find another path. Sitting alone, Mu Maiyong ponders Mu Maiyong's difficult childhood. Side effects from powerful elixirs ruin his body and leave him weak. Enemies and mocking subordinates surround him on all sides. That's when he realizes Mu Maiyong felt completely isolated and alone. Mu Maiyong concludes that the young master never had a single ally. He wonders if that deep distrust drove Mu Maiyong to betray him, even viewing his own escort warrior as a threat. Tightening his grip on his robes, he dismisses these thoughts and refuses to excuse the betrayal. He reminds himself that Mu Maiyong still orchestrated the demonic cult's arrival and the clan's total annihilation. He sniffs and compares his own chosen isolation to the young master's circumstances. Then he pauses and stares at the box on the table, curious about its contents. Looking at the mushroom-only dish, he figures Wu Yang must have prepared it. He grumbles at the bland meal, wishing for some meat to fill the void. Eating through the sparse portion, he wonders how this body became so obese on such a diet. The night slips away, leaving only the reminder that one person remains loyal. By dawn, the courtyard echoes with his heavy, labored breathing. He pushes through a grueling routine, letting out ragged breaths as exhaustion hits him like a truck. The body feels weak and achy after a pathetic warm-up. Wu Yang enters the yard early and approaches with a bundle of laundry. She asks if he plans on training again, but he only scratches his head in response. She offers a polite farewell and starts to walk away. He stops her to ask about the clothes, causing her to flinch in total surprise. She turns back, stammering an apology and explaining that she fell asleep while waiting to wash them. He realizes she might be a bit scatterbrained, but he knows she is his only real ally. Approaching her, he startles her again by placing a firm hand on her shoulder. He offers his sincere thanks, leaving her completely flustered and confused. She stammers as she asks what the gratitude is for. He apologizes for the trouble, but asks her to work harder, since his future training will mean even more laundry. He jogs away to resume his session, leaving her standing alone in the courtyard. Wu Yang was surprised as he's staring after him in disbelief as she whispers his name. Dawn hits the estate, and he dives straight into his physical training. He forces his heavy frame forward, jogging across the courtyard while his unconditioned muscles scream. Breath grows ragged with every step as he pushes past his limits. The guy gasps for air, his chest heaving like a bellows under the strain. He feels like he is dying, but he refuses to stop, holding on to a memory. A wooden sword cracks through the air as his instructor barks at him. She demands to know his target and questions if his focus shifted toward the upcoming festival. Calling him an ungrateful rascal, she reminds him who feeds never decided anything for himself in his past life. Back then, he held the sword only to repay the grace of the man who took in a nameless orphan. The patriarch walks through the bustling streets while fireworks fill the sky. Present-day Mumayong pants heavily, yet a genuine smile breaks across his face. He realizes that for the first time, he is actually having fun. With newfound determination, he runs through the moonlit courtyard, enjoying every second. He struggles to keep his footing while Wuliang watches the agonizing training from the corridor. She whispers his title, her heart aching as he pushes his body to the edge. His strength finally vanishes, and he collapses hard onto the wet ground. Wuliang rushes to his side, hauling him up with surprising strength. Even when the skies open up, Mumayong refuses to quit the relentless training. The guards mutter in disbelief, noting he is back out in the miserable rain. He presses onward, his resolve as solid as stone. Mumayong splashes through the deep puddles with heavy, determined steps. One observer demands the crowd hand over the money they wagered against him. A disciple mocks Nung Ryowon for losing another bet, laughing while brandishing his coin pouch. He notes how Nung Ryowon keeps betting that the young master will skip the session. Grinding his teeth, Nung Ryowon calls the display pathetic and claims he hates seeing the guy pretend to train. As he marches into the downpour, his companion tells him to lower his voice to avoid getting caught. He snaps back that he cares little, since the disgraced young master has already lost his title and quarters. Nung Ryowon argues that even if the deadbeat somehow becomes patriarch, he will hold zero real power. The companion asks him to explain that reasoning. Nung Ryowon explains that the Council of Elders holds the real authority and doubts the army will follow the young master's orders. His companion admits that the point is hard to deny. Declaring that every disciple will soon choose between the commander's forces and the council, Nung Ryowon scoffs at the idea of the young master doing anything about it. His companion finally tells him to be quiet, calling him dramatic and bitter just because he lost a few coins. The men call it a day, one of them cheering as he thanks the eldest young master for his winnings. They trek through the downpour while another complains about the freezing weather. Nung Ryowon mutters about how annoying the entire situation remains. He stands dead still in the rain and tracks Mumayong, who trudges through the wet courtyard like a man lost in his own head. Nung Ryowon assumes the pig is plotting something, questioning if he actually believes a change in attitude will win him back the title of patriarch. Mumayong splashes past him without a word, his focus locked straight ahead. Staying perfectly still, Nung Ryowon stares him down. He spits on the ground, realizing his target heard every insult but decided to play it cool. Nung Ryowon ignores the rain as he glares at the retreating figure, while Wuliang watches from behind, terrified for him. She stayed silent, unable to find the right words to help. The sun rises the next morning over a clear, quiet courtyard. Mumayong walks to the weapon rack and rips a training sword from the stand. He raises the blade, determined to break his limits and force his body to grow stronger. A heavy silence hangs in the air as he begins his training. He narrows his eyes, feeling the heft of the steel in his hand. Straining every muscle, he swings the blade with perfect focus. He notes his form finally sharpening and realizes his stamina has increased enough to handle the weapon with ease. He plots to combine his sword arts, betting that the transition will help his body absorb elixirs much faster. Suddenly, Wuliang's voice cuts through the air, demanding someone take back their disrespectful words. Mumayong stops his drills and spots Mumayong watching the scene like it is a cheap theater performance. Mumayong scoffs, wondering aloud how a lowly maid finds the guts to mouth off. The disciple freezes, stunned by her sudden outburst. He lunges to grab the maid in a fit of fury, but halts the moment he realizes she is Wuliang. Nung Ryowon grabbed Wuliang by her collar, furiously demanding to know what she had just said. He glared at her, daring her to repeat her words. Wuliang glared back without flinching, demanding that he take back the insult he had directed toward the young master. Nearby disciples noticed the commotion, whispering among themselves about how Nung Ryowon had been caught badmouthing the eldest young master by the maid. They decided to leave them be and walk away. Nung Ryowon trembled with rage, his voice shaking as he muttered in disbelief. He growled in fury, unable to believe that a mere maid would dare to act so insolently toward him. Wuliang held her ground, staring him down with unwavering resolve despite the danger. Losing his temper completely, Nung Ryowon began to draw his sword to strike her down. Nung Ryowon drew his blade and threatened Wuliang, sneering that he wanted to see if her insolent attitude would change with a sword at her throat. Before his blade could reach her, a sudden, powerful strike intervened, paring the attack away in a sharp clash of metal. Nung Ryowon stumbled backward in utter disbelief, struggling to comprehend who could have possibly blocked his strike. Mu Maiyong stood firmly in front of Wu Yong with his sword drawn, demanding to know what Nung Ryowon thought he was doing. Nung Ryowon could only stare in stunned silence, completely frozen by the sudden intervention. Nung Ryowon muttered in disbelief, wondering if he was truly speaking to the eldest young master. Mu Maiyong grasped the hilt of his sword, slowly drawing the blade. Nung Ryowon stumbled backward in sheer panic, stammering a quiet denial. Mu Maiyong commanded him to raise his sword. They locked eyes in a tense standoff. Nung Ryowon left utterly bewildered by the sudden shift in atmosphere. Mu Maiyong stepped forward to shield Wu Yong, declaring that if Nung Ryowon had anything to say to her, he should say it to him instead. He demanded that they settle the matter with their weapons. Mu Maiyong aimed his blade directly at his opponent, sealing any path of escape. Nung Ryowon asked in utter shock if he was genuinely being challenged to a duel. Mu Maiyong smirked at the word, completely unfazed by the confrontation. Mu Maiyong proposed a life-and-death match, his voice carrying a sudden, heavy gravity. Nung Ryowon stood frozen, completely taken aback by the unexpected challenge. He offered a deal, promising not to make an issue of the incident if Nung Ryowon won. Mu Maiyong added that he would never step foot on the training ground again, asking if those terms were sufficient. Wu Yong cried out in panic, desperately trying to get his attention. She frantically reminded herself that he had not even held a sword in the past month, realizing she had to stop him before it was too late. Without a word, Mu Maiyong slammed his wooden sword heavily into the ground, shattering the dirt beneath it. Wu Yong gasped in shock as the weapon remained firmly planted in the earth. Mu Maiyong quietly resolved to himself that while he could tolerate insults directed at his own person, there was a limit to his patience. He firmly decided that he would never tolerate insults directed toward those who actually cared for him. With a sudden movement, Mu Maiyong placed his hand on the hilt of his sword and began to draw it. Nung Ryowon drew his own blade, hesitantly asking if Mu Maiyong truly promised to go through with this. Mu Maiyong firmly replied that he would never go back on his word. Nung Ryowon did not expect Mu Maiyong to act like this, but since things had come to this point, he realized he had no choice but to fight. Wu Yong watched from behind, her face filled with worry. He took a fighting stance, reminding himself that Mu Maiyong had promised not to make an issue of the matter if he won, so he simply had to win the duel. Nung Ryowon reassured himself that he was overwhelmingly superior in power, speed, and swordsmanship anyway, leaving the deadbeat young master with absolutely no chance of winning. Mu Maiyong stood ready with his sword, as Nung Ryan muttering about how pathetic his opponent was. Nung Ryan focused his energy, his sword tip gleaming with a cold light as he whispered the word deadbeat back at him. Nung Ryan stepped back as he was surprised in confusion if it was the unfathomable spirit. Mu Maiyong's face contorted with rage, steam rising from his body as he asked why, demanding to know if he was afraid. Nung Ryan groaned, sweat dripping down his face as the pressure weighed heavily on him. Mu Maiyong gritted his teeth and resolved that if Mu Maiyong would not make the first move, he would have to strike first. The sword soared high into the sky, spinning rapidly through the weapon plunged sharply into the dirt between them, marking a decisive end to their brief clash. Nung Ryowon stood frozen in sheer disbelief, his mind reeling from the sudden turn of events. He struggled to comprehend how such a thing was even possible. He wondered if his opponent had deliberately aimed for his sword rather than his body from the very beginning. He realized that when he had raised his sword to block, the force was redirected to send his own weapon flying. He questioned if the Cheon clan possessed such an advanced technique, unable to recognize the swordsmanship. He wondered if Mu Maiyong aimed for his sword instead of him from the start, as blood drips on his neck. Besides that swordsmanship, he wondered if the Cheon clan have a technique like that, and when Mu Maiyong become this strong. Mu Maiyong pointed his blade forward, reminding him that he had explicitly declared this to be a life-and-death match, and chided Nung Ryowon for swinging his sword so carelessly in front of an opponent. Mu Maiyong asked if that careless style was truly how they trained disciples in the Cheon clan. Nung Ryowon collapsed to the ground. Mu Maiyong stood over him, looking down with cold disappointment, and called him pathetic. Mu Maiyong turned his back on Nung Ryan, dragging the sword along the dirt road. He declared that Nung Ryowon was no longer qualified to wield the weapon, while the other disciples watched in silence. Blood dripped slowly from the tight grip on the sword's hilt as the reality of the defeat settled in. Mu Maiyong raised the blade and told Nung Ryowon to think deeply about the true reason he chose to wield a sword. He challenged him to find that answer and seek him out once more. He promised that once Nung Ryowon discovered his true purpose, they would fight for the ownership of the sword once again. Kneeling amidst a swirling blue energy, Nung Ryowon repeated the question to himself, wondering what his true reason for holding a blade really was. Turning to leave, Mu Maiyong called out to Wuliang, telling her it was time for them to head back. Mu Maiyong knelt and accepted his orders. They marched forward with Wuliang at his side, leaving the other subordinates flinching in his wake. Mu Maiyong was suddenly struck by a chilling realization that left him paralyzed with shock. He reached out instinctively, his body reacting to a growing sense of impending dread. He could only watch from the ground. The entrance to the hall stood ready as the morning light signaled the arrival of Mu Maiyong. As he finally stepped into the room, their presence immediately shifting, though was instantly overcome with terror, stammering out a desperate apology to Mu Maiyong for his earlier interference. Wuliang knelt on the floor before Mu Maiyong, explaining that she had become overwhelmed with emotion after seeing the others mock his hard work. She bowed her head deeply to the ground, apologizing sincerely and blaming herself for the injury to his hand. Mu Maiyong scratched his face, silently noting that the injury was actually from using a technique too straining for his body, though he couldn't explain that to her. He assured her there was no need to apologize since she had only stepped in for his sake. Wuliang looked up in utter surprise, startled by his gentle reassurance. Mu Maiyong stood tall with his sword, declaring that while he would tolerate insults directed at himself, he would never tolerate them toward those who cared for him. He resolved that he would never hold back when it came to protecting his people, regardless of who his opponent might be. Wuliang gasped in sudden shock as the memories rushed back to her. She remembered him asking what his New Year's wish was. In her memory, the young master had turned back to look at her. He had declared with absolute certainty that he wanted to become strong. They had walked together through the bustling festival crowd under the warm glow of the lanterns. He had promised to become a patriarch as strong as an elephant, so he could protect everyone. He had proudly carried his elephant lantern through the night. He had vowed to start his sword training at the training grounds the very next day. He had stood tall, full of youthful pride and determination. He had called out to Wuliang, acknowledging that she might be taller than him. But he had promised that he would protect her too. Back in the present, tears began to drip silently onto the stone floor. She wept softly, smiling as she realized that the eldest young master she knew was still there. Wuliang looked at Mu Maiyong and remarked that he finally seemed like the eldest young master she used to know. Suddenly, a voice echoed to the room as he asked about those words, which Mu Maiyong paused, his mind instantly snagging on her words as he tried to process them. The voice asked if he could take responsibility for them. Wuliang and Mu Maiyong stared back at him in confusion. Suddenly, Mu Maiyong stiffened as he sensed someone approaching from behind. The newcomer was none other than Mu Maiyong's uncle. Heavy footsteps echoed through the courtyard as the uncle drew closer. He was known as one of the 3 pillars supporting the prestigious Cheon clan. Both Mu Maiyong and Wuliang turned to face the approaching figure as his footsteps drew near. He also served as the general commander of the Heavenly Dragon and Heavenly Phoenix sword units. Cian Hak grimaced, repeating the young master's previous question with deep irritation. He raised his voice, sternly demanding to know if Mu Maiyong could actually take responsibility for those words. Mu Maiyong greeted the general commander as his uncle, noting it had been a long time since they last met. He bowed deeply, showing respect to Mu Maiyong before him. He admitted he had been negligent and failed to visit him sooner. He reflected on the commander he once trusted and followed more than anyone else. He thought back to Mu Maiyong, who had once held his complete loyalty. He remained in his bow, his mind filled with memories of the past. He marveled at the fact that he was meeting Mu Maiyong again under such circumstances. Cian Hak repeated the word uncle with clear disdain, questioning the familiarity. He shouted at Mu Maiyong to stop wasting time with clumsy courtesies and answer the question. He demanded an answer, his voice booming with authority and anger. The general commander's attitude toward the eldest young master had remained unchanged for 15 years. Cian Hak had long ago declared that the eldest young master was beyond any hope of redemption. Mu Maiyong asked why he would ever say something he couldn't take responsibility for as the eldest young master. He adjusted his grip on his sword, preparing to stand his ground. He declared that his creed was to protect his own people. Cian Hak repeated the words in disbelief, questioning the young master's protectiveness and creed. His eye twitched as he processed the bold claim, the tension between them reaching a breaking point. Cian Hak spat that his mouth defiled those words. He pointed out that the sword technique used in the duel was the Heavenly Dragon sword art secret. Technique, the Dragon's Claw. He explained that because it was a secret technique of the Heavenly Dragon sword unit, someone who was not a member could not have learned it. Therefore, he concluded that Mu Maiyong must have illicitly learned it from a traitor who broke their oath. Cian Hak reasoned that since the traitor was someone who cared for Mu Maiyong, they had to be one of his people. He declared his intention to find this traitor immediately and punish them severely, along with anyone who harbored them. He challenged Mu Maiyong to protect them, as he claimed he would. He warned that if Mu Maiyong failed, he would hold him responsible for the day's disturbance and ban him from the training ground forever. Mu Maiyong realized that his uncle was simply using this as an excuse to completely banish him from the training ground because he despised seeing him there. Xian Hak demanded to know who the traitor was. Mu Maiyong cautioned himself that he had to choose his words very carefully. Mu Maiyong speaks up to reveal the traitor's identity. Our guy calmly declares that no traitor actually exists. Xian Hak stares in disbelief and demands to know what he means. That's when Mu Maiyong explains to his uncle actually taught him in a past life. He claims he copied the dragon's claw technique after seeing it just once. But Xian Hak just scoffs at the ridiculous explanation. Then he bursts into booming laughter over the unbelievable claim. And just like that, the laughter stops as heavy silence takes over. So he draws his weapon while muttering about the ridiculous story. Xian Hak blocks the path to keep Mu Maiyong and Wu Liang from passing. He claims nobody could copy that art in one glance and demands Mu Maiyong draw his weapon to settle it. Mu Maiyong freezes as the gravity of the situation hits him. Then Xian Hak draws his blade and directs his lethal intent straight at him. So Mu Maiyong repeats his explanation and challenges him to show another style to copy on the spot. But General Commander stares back in silent disbelief at the bold challenge. That's when Mu Maiyong squeezes his hands until blood seeps through his fingers, but refuses to back down. And just like that, Xian Hak dismisses the offer as a lie and declares he cannot trust another word. Now Xian Hak turns his attention to Wu Liang. She quickly responds to confirm she is listening. The commander stares down and demands she speak right now. Wu Liang looks up as he demands to know what Mu Maiyong is plotting. But she breaks into a cold sweat under his intense presence. Her hands tremble violently as she clutches her dress. Stammering through her terror, she explains what this guy has been doing for the past month. In her memory, Wu Liang watches as Mu Maiyong runs off and leaves her completely bewildered. Our guy chuckles and scratches his head in sheer delight. He wears a genuine smile totally unlike his usual self. Back in the room, Wu Liang trembles with deep anxiety over his drastic change. She reports to Xian Hak that Mu Maiyong has been smiling constantly. That makes him gasp in absolute shock at the news. He questions her in disbelief, asking if she means the man always filled with rage. Wu Liang stands quietly before him. She softly confirms it is true while recalling the strange sight. And she remembers how he behaved while running around the training ground. Mu Maiyong runs laps across the courtyard to push himself forward. Sure enough, Wu Liang recalls with surprise that he kept smiling through it all. He keeps running and wears a satisfied smile despite his exhaustion. Then Xian Hak glances back at Mu Maiyong in silence. Now he notes that Wu Liang witnessed the entire thing. Mu Maiyong admits he only smiled because he is happy to finally work for himself. Behind them, Wu Liang walks along while remembering how he ignored everyone. Wu Liang remembers Mu Maiyong ignoring his mockers without a single glance. She tells Xian Hak that the old Mu Maiyong would have fled in anger. But our guy did neither this time. Clutching her hands, she recalls him drawing his sword and declares he has changed. Now she proudly proclaims her complete faith in him. Xian Hak listens in silence, wondering if Mu Maiyong actually changed. Turning around, he asks Mu Maiyong what martial arts he knows. Mu Maiyong names his art, but Xian Hak dismisses him as ordinary. Shocked, Mu Maiyong stares as him holds up 2 fingers, granting him 2 months. He challenges him to defeat the head disciple to prove his words. Leaning in, he demands to know if he can actually do it. Mu Maiyong goes quiet, remembering his uncle always tested him like that. Mu Maiyong boldly claims 1 month is more than enough. Xian Hak stares back in silence like he just saw a ghost. Then he lowers his head to ponder the conversation. He grips his sword hilt tightly until the metal clicks. Our guy accepts the terms and turns around to walk away. He tells Wu Liang they are heading back, catching her off guard. But he takes off to run with his sword over his shoulder. Wu Liang cheerfully runs after him as he disappears down the corridor. Fast forward 15 days. Mu Maiyong draws his sword with a smooth and practiced motion. Then he swings the blade downward to deliver a powerful strike. This guy spends 15 days training to reach the 5th stage. While he dissolves his yang energy, he cannot dissolve the different yin energy. A better cultivation method from the Heavenly Dragon Library would change everything. Looking at his scarred palm, he wishes his Dantian could heal just as easily. He keeps his head down as other disciples jeer about his upcoming humiliation. Mu Maiyong stands quietly in the courtyard while the whispers continue. One disciple half-heartedly warns the others that our guy might hear them. The disciples laugh anyway and whisper that he should just run. They mock his basic downward cuts like he is just chopping firewood. Mu Maiyong approaches the group from behind and asks if they are sharing an interesting story. His sudden voice instantly startles the disciple in front of him. Then he looks closely at Li Suk and asks if he is the group leader. Li Suk looks up in confusion to ask what he wants. but he quickly smirks and promises to go easy on him to end the duel quickly. Our guy stares back at his familiar face and asks for his name. Lee Suk-ji cracks his knuckles and smugly introduces himself. Hearing the name makes Mumayong gasp as his memory clicks. He recognizes this man as the traitor who leaked clan secrets to the demonic cult, so he lets out a low groan to hold back his rising disgust. Now he burns the traitor's name deep into his mind, and Lee Suk bows with a fake grin to mock him in front of the guards. Without another word, Mumayong turns and walks away with his hand gripping his sword. Originally, his only plan was to do his best in the match. Disciples whisper and follow behind him as he crosses the grounds. But his mindset is completely different now. The traitor's name repeats in his head like a curse. He silently promises that retribution will find him very soon. 15 days pass in a flash to bring the long-awaited duel. Spectators pack the grand arena for the match. The crowd whispers about the young master getting crushed today, while others notice his recent changes. That's when the announcer roars for silence to declare the event is starting. He announces that the duel arranged by Seonhak is officially beginning. From his high throne, the patriarch commands them to call the duelists. Now the field clears for the next round. Lee Suk steels himself for the fight. Then the announcer calls for Lee Suk to take the field. Without hesitation, Lee Suk steps up the stairs and marches to the center. And he answers the summons with a loud shout. His sword slides out with a sharp motion to prepare for battle. Next, the announcer summons Mumayong to step forward. The caller shouts his name across the courtyard to get a response. But only silence follows as everyone waits for him to move. The announcer calls out the missing Mumayong once more. He turns toward the crowd to search for Mumayong. A student asks why the contestant takes so long to show. The rest of the crowd whispers that he probably ran away. Mumayong scoffs and smirks at the missing fighter's cowardice anyway. Then the crowd laughs and jeers at the deadbeat eldest master. While Seonhak stays quiet, his subordinate smirks in amusement. That's when a loud shout announces Mumayong has finally arrived. So his subordinate gasps like he is seeing a ghost. But the general commander turns around to see for himself. Now Mumayong and Woolyong walk side by side into the courtyard. Our guy steps forward with a calm and easy stride. The crowd whispers and wonders where the fat young master went. And soon, a few onlookers realize his face looks strangely familiar. Someone shouts that this newcomer is actually the eldest young master. His appearance is transformed as he walks forward with steady steps. Looking ahead, he announces his arrival to the entire crowd. The crowd murmurs in disbelief at Mumayong's sudden weight loss. Behind him, Woolyong watches as whispers fill the courtyard. That's when Mumayong looks up at the high balcony. Bowing with his wooden sword, he apologizes to Seonhak for arriving late. Seonhak looks down sternly and tells him to skip the formalities. After that, he asks if our guy is ready. Spectators gather around the arena as the events begin, and a heavy silence falls over the courtyard before the formal challenge. Mumayong steels himself and focuses on the fight ahead. Next, he steps smoothly into the center of the arena. Lee Suk wonders if losing weight gave him this much confidence. Drawing his wooden sword, Lee Suk prepares for the clash. To him, a single month of training makes this challenge absurd. But he still doubts Seonhak's decision to allow such a mismatch. A quick glance to the side changes his mind completely. This match actually works in his favor as a perfect stage. Having Seonhak in the crowd is a prime opportunity to get noticed. Up on the balcony, the commanders watch them like they are dissecting prey. Lee Suk notes that the leaders of the top units are watching too. So he resolves to leave a lasting impression on everyone present. Now he notices that Mumayong is completely ignoring him. Scowling, this guy assumes his opponent is just desperately scheming to impress them. Looking down, Mumayong remembers how Lee Suk leeched off others for power. Lee Suk climbed the ranks through politics instead of real skill. Previously, he won over the old Mumayong with endless flattery. Then greed drove Lee Suk to leak vital intelligence to the demonic cult. Now, the spectral image of Mumayong's past self looms behind him. He must deliver the judgment he failed to execute in his past life. Though those crimes have not happened yet, he must be stopped. Everything has likely gone to Cheon Muriang's plans, allowing him to climb. Lee Suk smirks at his climb and wonders what his opponent will do now. But Mumayong grips his wooden sword and resolves to end Lee Suk's career today. The announcer declares the match will run until he calls it, and he warns them that this is only a formal bout. That's when our guy settles into his stance with steady hands. Lee Suk watches him with a mocking grin. So, of course, Seonhak shouts the command to start the fight. Mumayong explodes forward to close the distance and launch his strike. Lee Suk lunges forward with a swift charge of his own. Then he stands his ground to counter the strike. Planting his foot firmly, he secures his stance. With a powerful upward swing, his wooden sword intercepts the attack. Lee Suk mentions hearing how Mu Maiyong defeated Nung Ryowon this way, and he explains that the tactic relies on deflecting counters with a bizarre technique. Spinning his wooden weapon, Lee Suk challenges him to handle the next move. Mu Maiyong glares and focuses entirely on his opponent as the clash intensifies. Lee Suk tightens his grip and challenges him to strike it away. Without hesitation, Mu Maiyong swings his wooden sword downward. The weapons collide and send vibrations through both of their arms. But Mu Maiyong remains focused while Lee Suk grins as they lock eyes. Lee Suk quickly pivots and launches another swift strike. Both fighters dash past each other in a blur as weapons cut through. Mu Maiyong flinches in pain and swishes his sword while gritting his teeth. During the exchange, Lee Suk decides to end this out of respect. But he cannot waste this chance before the gathered commanders. So he manages to grab Mu Maiyong's hand. This guy recoils as Lee Suk swings and warns him against overconfidence. Lee Suk lunges forward, shouting that this is the moment of truth. Mu Maiyong gasps as the incredibly fast strike closes the distance. The blow lands hard enough to throw him off balance. Struggling to regain his footing, his body strains against the momentum. He cries out in pain from the rattling impact. Lee Suk smiles smugly and declares this is the difference in their levels. And just like that, Mu Maiyong collapses to the ground from the overwhelming strike. Lee Suk looks up at the balcony. Wishing his opponent was better than Cheon Muriang, he hopes to impress the commanders. Standing proudly, he raises his fist and smirks because everything went perfectly. Then he waits for the crowd to cheer. But silence fills the arena and leaves him confused. That's when a strange sensation washes over him instead. The entire training ground suddenly tilts sideways as disorientation sets in. He opens his eyes to process his surroundings. And just like that, a heavy foot steps down right next to his face. Gasping, Lee Suk feels a powerful presence looming over him. Looking up, he stutters Mu Maiyong's name in disbelief. Our guy looks down calmly and asks if he enjoyed his nice nap. Lee Suk lies there dazed, trying to figure out why he is flat on the ground. He struggles to move, but his paralyzed body refuses to listen. So he lies defeated and incapacitated on the stone floor. That's when he notices the shattered weapon on the ground is his own wooden sword. The reality of his defeat finally sinks in. Suddenly, he remembers Mu Maiyong moving with overwhelming speed and power. Mu Maiyong closes the distance in a split second, shattering the wooden sword with a powerful impact. Lee Suk stares frozen at the useless hilt left in his hand. The weapon is split clean down the middle. With a swift strike, Mu Maiyong unleashes a downward slash that severs the weapon. Wooden splinters rain down around him as he holds the broken hilt. And Mu Maiyong strikes Lee Suk's head with his wooden stick. Lying helplessly on the ground, Lee Suk wonders how he lost as Mu Maiyong watches. This guy looks down with disdain, calling him a potential traitor and leaving Lee Suk confused. Turning around, Mu Maiyong spares his life but warns he will be watching. Lee Suk rationalizes the defeat by telling himself he just let his guard down. Still on the ground, he wonders what to do next now that his situation is ruined. Mu Maiyong stands calmly over him and sheaths his wooden sword. Disbelief ripples through the crowd after the single-strike victory. Then Wuliang grips her sword and calls out with relief. That's when Mu Maiyong looks up at the leaders in the pavilion. Cian Hak looks down from his seat and hums thoughtfully. Meanwhile, our guy stands victorious over an unconscious Lee Suk. Cian Hak watches in heavy silence while contemplating the match, and whispers spread across the grounds over the massive upset. Maiyong Hak nearby trembles while gripping his robes in anger. But he grinds his teeth and curses Lee Suk for ruining their perfect plan. Now he just glares in silence as his hatred grows. The crowd whispers as his opponent falls in one strike. They wonder if Mu Maiyong used some kind of trick. But our guy silently watches the crowd. Someone shouts and calls him a cocky deadbeat. Then Cian Hak stands up to announce the winner. That's when Mu Maiyong interrupts and shouts that he knows all their grievances. This sudden interruption catches Cian Hak off guard. Mu Maiyong confesses to his past wrongs. He openly admits he was total trash. Both Cian Hak and Wuliang listen in silence. Our guy cannot even remember the faces of his past victims. After all, the original Mu Maiyong committed those sins, not him. but he resolves to shoulder the consequences anyway. Now he finally has a chance to set things right. That is why he steps forward and shouts his name to the entire arena. He raises his voice and apologizes for his past evil deeds. And just like that, he bows deeply to show his sincerity. The crowd stares at him like they just saw a ghost. Both Wuliang and Xianhak watch him in utter silence. Mumayong lowers his head even further. He tells them to visit the training ground if they still hold a grudge. Then he promises to wait right there for them. This guy turns and tells Wuliang it is time to leave. Xianhak strokes his beard while watching them walk away. On their way back, Mumayong thanks Wuliang for the sword. He admits he brought it in case a real fight broke out. Mumayong reaches out to take the weapon back, but Wuliang pulls it away and asks why. Cradling the weapon, Wuliang asks to keep holding Sokian a bit longer. Mumayong mutters the sword's name as recognition hits him. He gasps as the truth finally clicks. Just like that, he freezes in place while processing her words. High on a roof, Mumayong looks down at Xianhak waiting in the courtyard. A faint, knowing smile spreads across our guy's face as he watches. Then he marvels at hearing those exact words again after so many years. But Xianhak brings up the earlier sword technique with a serious tone, and he repeats his question to press Mumayong on the true purpose behind his strike. Without hesitation, Mumayong firmly states that his target was the sky itself. Now this guy smiles brightly and declares he intended to cut the sky. Xianhak freezes in shock like he just saw a ghost. Looking down in disbelief, he mutters that the claim is ridiculous. That's when he realizes Mumayong just described his own lifelong pursuit. And he feels a bitter irony that the nephew he hates understands his life's work. So Xianhak concedes defeat, tells Mumayong he won, and asks what reward he wants. Immediately, Mumayong requests entry to the Heavenly Dragon Library. But Xianhak raises his hand and cuts him off because it is outside his authority. Placing a hand on his chin, our guy hums thoughtfully to ponder his next move. Then a sudden realization strikes him. He asks Xianhak to assign one person to duel him every single day. Xianhak questions if simple duels are actually enough for his training. So Mumayong replies that it is more than enough. And he asserts that nothing replaces actual combat for real training. Xianhak stares back in silence to process his conviction. Turning away sharply, he notes that Mumayong will grow stronger daily. This guy shoulders his practice weapon, confessing that is his exact goal. Then Xianhak walks out, leaving Mumayong and Wuliang alone. Walking through the grounds, Wuliang asks what he meant by the sky. Mumayong explains it is a secret shared only with the general commander. The next morning, a disciple stomps his foot and yells in fury. Marching away, he complains about the arrogant demand for daily duels after one lucky win. And he continues stomping forward, muttering that Li Suk was always an incompetent fool, acting like the head of disciples. This new situation feels like an improvement to him. He grips his sword to prepare for the challenge. Myonghak draws his blade as the metal slides from the sheath. His eyes lock onto his goal while the steel gleams. Staring at his reflection, he prepares himself. That night, a voice from the dark calls everyone nearby lowly. The man shouts and asks if anyone knows who he is. Lanterns light up the tavern district as people move through the street. Between hiccups, he claims he is the eldest master of the Cheon clan and screams his name. The real Cheon Muriang stumbles through the street with a bottle and a sword. Looking up from the ground, Mumayong asks why this is happening. He thinks about visiting a tavern with a wealthy novice, only to run into this deadbeat. Nearby, a patron asks if they should leave while a victim begs for mercy. A friend warns him not to look so they don't get dragged into the trouble. Disciples watch the fight and wonder if they should step in. An older student tells the rookie to stay out of it. The weapon swings as Mumayong yells that he won't be treated like a joke. He asks if they dare disrespect the head of the Cheon clan. Someone screams as the blade cuts through the air. The strike hits the disciple's chest and blood drips onto the floor. He asks Myonghak why he is in the way. He scoffs and calls Myonghak a fool, saying the injury is his own fault. Touching the blood on his mouth, Myonghak stares in shock. As the hit sinks in, he remembers when the man was still fat. Myonghak remembers the young master calling him a scammer and telling him to get lost while a servant panicked over the blood. The insults echo in his head as he stares at his reflection on his blade. With a sneer, he vows to leave that same scar on his opponent's face during their first duel. Mu Maiyong leaps high into the air and soars gracefully. He descends with a sharp downward cut. Cha Myonghak stands on the ground and watches his approach. But Cha Myonghak gets angry because Mu Maiyong acts so dismissively. He grits his teeth because Mu Maiyong ignores him completely. Right then, Cha Myonghak braces himself for a life-and-death sword battle. Meanwhile, Woolyong pours a cup of tea for him while he waits. That's when Cha Myonghak shifts his attention and glares at her. Woolyong calmly explains the wait will take a while and offers refreshments. He asks if she is the one who clashed with Nung Ryawa. Then he declines her offer because his duel is starting soon. Woolyong confirms Mu Maiyong trains diligently every single day without fail. She admits his dedication is good, but worries he pushes too hard. But Cha Myonghak asks why she cares after being tormented before. Woolyong explains that Mu Maiyong is different now and rights his past wrongs. And she softly adds that she believes in his sincerity. Sip in hand, Cha Myonghak silently admits Mu Maiyong is different. He watches the training session and recognizes our guy's immense effort. The simple jump and slash routine still feels completely off to him. That is when a sudden chill runs down his spine. Looking down, he realizes Mu Maiyong lands with absolute precision. Then he looks up to analyze the exact height of the sword. He watches in disbelief as Mu Maiyong leaps up again. Understanding how he achieves such flawless mastery seems impossible. Tracking the descending blade leaves him breathless from its sheer perfection. A terrifying realization hits him like a freight train. He wonders if Mu Maiyong is targeting him directly. The sword swings down and creates a sharp, whistling wind. Cha Myonghak gasps as he realizes how close the strike lands. Now he stands frozen, looking around the area in a daze. Cha Myonghak fumes as he regains his composure. A cut from a thin cut on his forehead before the match even starts. He grits his teeth and realizes Mu Maiyong was targeting him from the very beginning. But Mu Maiyong casually apologizes for the wait without a single care. That's when Cha Myonghak turns around in shock at that insane speed. Mu Maiyong waves and says it is good to see him. Then Myonghak asks if he actually knows his name. Our guy confirms it and adds that Myonghak will become an official clan warrior. He explains that he wants to memorize the name of every single member. Now Myonghak wonders if that includes every trainee in the entire clan. So he stands frozen in silence as Mu Maiyong keeps watching him. Mu Maiyong points at his scar and asks if he caused it. And Myonghak confirms that he did. Mu Maiyong ponders the answer as his voice trails off. He finally understands why Myonghak wanted him dead in the past. Since his former self caused the injury, he has no memory of it. But Mu Maiyong sheathes his sword with a loud click to break the tension. He bows deeply and apologizes for the foolish mistake that left the scar. Then he begs for forgiveness since he cannot undo his past actions. Myonghak and Woolyong stare at him in disbelief. Now Myonghak wonders if he actually heard an apology from the man who never admits fault. That old Mu Maiyong only blamed and insulted others unlike this guy. And he wonders if the reports about this massive personality change are actually true. He opens his mouth to speak, but fails to find the words. So Myonghak places his teacup down with a sharp tap to end the talk. Without another word, he quietly admits his defeat. Mu Maiyong stands there confused since their fight barely even started. But Myonghak walks out of the courtyard and says he lost for today. He promises to prepare properly and challenge him again next time. Mu Maiyong and Woolyong watch him leave with blank faces. Our guy wonders if Myonghak smiled and accepted the apology. Woolyong shrugs in response even though she knows there was no smile. Then Mu Maiyong turns. Mu Maiyong turns to Woolyong and asks for a favor. He wants her to write a list of his past misdeeds. But he insists she leave nothing out, and she reluctantly agrees. Fixing these mistakes is his first step, so our guy accepts this duty as his own burden. The next day, daily duels begin at the estate. A disciple charges with a wooden staff, calling this karma. Mu Maiyong leaps high to avoid the rush. Then his strike lands squarely in the middle of the attack, and the disciple drops his weapon, collapsing in pain. Standing over him, Mu Maiyong politely praises the match and suggests another spar. But the man just lies on the ground in silence. More challengers step forward, but none can stand against him. Clutching an injured shoulder, one defeated disciple walks away grumbling. Woolyong sticks her tongue out while marking another tally. That's when the sore loser stares at the ground in humiliation. He remembers when this guy was just a crying weakling. Cursing under his breath, he finally leaves the training grounds. Mu Maiyong remains undefeated until the final day. Now he retreats to his private chambers to focus. He sits at the 7th stage of his divine art. Yet the stubborn energy inside him refuses to melt. This cold block disrupts his vital qi flow. Because of that, he cannot access his Dantian's energy reservoir. Forcing the circulation will only trigger a dangerous qi deviation. So he opens his eyes and exhales a heavy breath. Clearly, he has hit the absolute limit of this technique. Maybe his only option is entering the Heavenly Dragon Library. Mu Maiyong sits in silence and looks out into the distance. But a nagging feeling bothers him. He wonders if he forgot something of great importance. And then a sharp shock of realization hits Mu Maiyong. The memory finally clicks into place. He shouts that he finally remembers and realizes his time is up. Then he yells that he needs to get ready immediately. Our guy scrambles off the platform and rushes away with frantic energy. But the patriarch is scheduled to return this very day. This benefactor took him in when he had nowhere else to go, and he anticipates seeing him again. So he hurries past the sliding doors to prepare for the arrival. Now dressed in formal attire, Mu Maiyong stands tall and composed. That's when he wonders if he should call out, recalling his old dream. A panicked voice calls out, addressing him as the eldest young master. Turning around in confusion, he wonders who is calling his name. He recognizes the girl as Wahong, Wuliang's friend. Gasping that Wuliang is in trouble, she makes him ask what happened. But Wahong only cries out that Wuliang is currently with his fiancée. Mu Maiyong freezes at the sudden news. Downstairs, a plate of meat lies shattered and spilled across the floor. Wuliang kneels on the floor, trembling violently. Sobbing on the ground, she repeatedly apologizes. And above her, Sohai and her guards look down with merciless expressions. Wuliang kneels on the courtyard floor, begging for forgiveness after spilling food. Trembling on the ground, she waits for her fate like a lamb at the slaughter. Sohai looks down coldly and declares an apology cannot clean stained clothes. Raising a fan to her face, she orders her men to handle it. Then the lead guard nods and prepares to carry out the sentence. He draws his sword to execute the helpless woman. Standing over Wuliang, the guard raises his weapon as she cowers. That's when Wahong rushes into the courtyard and screams for him to stop. But the guard ignores her and swings his blade down. Mu Maiyong drops from above and blocks the strike with his sword. The guard reels back in shock while Sohai watches closely. Our guy lunges forward immediately to neutralize the threat, and the attackers recoil as their advance gets completely halted. Standing in front of Wuliang, he demands an explanation. Wuliang looks up in relief and stammers out his title. But the hostile warriors just glare at him. He looks back coldly and introduces himself as the eldest master of the Cheon clan. That's when Sohai quickly apologizes and introduces himself as a member of the Sichuan Tang clan. Soon, she introduces herself properly. This guy recognizes her immediately as his wife from a past life. She was the legendary ice flower, Sohai. Back then, the Cheon patriarch proposed a marriage to the Tang clan. He believed their poison masters could cure Cheon Muriang's broken body. Mu Maiyong still remembers the agonizing pain of his body tearing apart. And the Tang clan accepted the offer to expand their own power. So she calmly accepted her fate despite meeting an obese groom. After a quick wedding, the patriarch let his guard down during years of treatment. The Tang clan used this opening to expand their territory. That wedding marked the beginning of the Cheon clan's downfall. Now, Mu Maiyong looks down at Sohai and her crew silently. Mu Maiyong whispers Sohai's name to himself. Glaring directly at her, he demands to know what she is doing. Sohai casually replies that she is just punishing a maid for staining her clothes. But Mu Maiyong points out she wanted to kill a clan maid over a dress. That's when Sohai glares, dismissing his concern for a mere maid. Then she argues Wuliang might have poisoned the food to justify her actions. Mu Maiyong warns her to stop being arrogant and follow Cheon clan law. Drawing his sword, our guy shields Wuliang from her insulting words. But Sohai counters that their authority still stands on Cheon territory. Peering over her fan, Sohai dares him to stop their execution. Without hesitation, a warrior guard draws his blade to strike. Mu Maiyong instantly recognizes the deadly force loaded into the opponent's weapon. The guard unleashes a lightning-fast slash that tears forward. He brings down an overhead strike, clashing violently against Mu Maiyong's sword. Our guy struggles to withstand the pressure of the heavy impact. Heavy blows push him back across the courtyard. Woolyong watches the clash and screams for her young master's safety. Sohai watches the duel calmly from behind her fan. Quietly, she readies a slender needle in her hand, waiting to strike. The attacker swings his blade in a wide arc for another blow. Mumayong blocks it head-on as their weapons repeatedly clash. He swings back with everything to match his opponent's brutal strength. His opponent must be Sohai's personal elite escort. Their blades collide with immense force once again. The heavy strikes confirm his opponent is a first-rate master. Another massive clash pushes them both back. Though skills are matched, Mumayong is losing in pure physical power. Both fighters back off, catch their breath, and size each other up. Switching tactics, Mumayong stomps his foot to anchor his stance. He lunges forward like a bullet, unleashing his signature sword style. The opponent activates a subtlety technique to close the distance. He dashes past Mumayong in a blur to avoid targeting him directly. Then Mumayong leaps high into the air. He aims to strike the opponent's sword as he swings his blade. The moment the weapon enters range, our guy strikes from below to snatch it. His strike connects perfectly as he unleashes a rapid downward flurry. That's when their weapons collide and a sword flies straight into the dirt. But Mumayong looks down to find his weapon gone. The blade slips away and clatters uselessly onto the stone floor. Now the opponent looks down mockingly and taunts his weak technique. Mumayong gasps for air, realizing his physical power cannot match his enemies. Sohai steps in and orders them both to stop. And she mocks him for caring so deeply about a mere maid. Walking past him, she tells him to be gentler at the banquet tonight. Then Wahong runs up screaming that something terrible happened to Woolyong. Mumayong freezes in horror at the devastating news. He screams Woolyong's name and bolts toward her. Meanwhile, Sohai and her men calmly exit the courtyard. She realizes Mumayong's physical condition is worse than the rumors suggested. If the patriarch finds out, she knows the wedding will be cancelled. So she decides to make the marriage irreversible to protect her plans. Next, she asks her fighter how Mumayong performed in battle. The warrior calls him weak with decent swordsmanship, but poor internal power. He adds that just 2 subordinates can easily take him down. But Sohai orders 4 men instead to ensure he misses the banquet. Back in the room, Mumayong desperately calls Woolyong's name to wake her. He checks her wrist and suspects Sohai poisoned her. This guy stares down in silence as old memories flood his mind. A plate of ruined food lies scattered across the floor. In his memory, Woolyong smiles brightly while promising to bring his meal. She walks away cheerfully and teases him about the meal. But Mumayong grits his teeth in agony as the memory cuts deep. He curses in frustration and lets his anger boil over. Then he scoops Woolyong's limp body into his arms. He rushes forward and orders Wahong to secure his sword. And Wahong screams back a panicked confirmation. A disciple peeks from behind a wooden pillar in absolute shock. He wonders what on earth is going on, but he hesitates to report the madness to his master. Medics prepare to treat the patient. They report they successfully gave her emergency treatment for the poison, but they warn of danger if it is a Tang clan toxin. A cure is impossible without the Tang clan's specific antidote. Now Woolyong lies unconscious in bed fighting the poison. Mumayong stands over her, then turns away to take action. He orders Wahong to look after her and grabs his sword. She asks where he is going as he walks out. Outside, he remembers the patriarch's banquet is tonight, and he knows he cannot miss it as the patriarch's son. So he decides to play the deadbeat son for one last day. Meanwhile, Hak walks down the corridor lost in thought. He strokes his chin and wonders why his brother invited the Tang clan. After all, they have the power to destroy the Cheon clan. The looming threat makes him stop in the hallway to think. But a crushing pressure suddenly makes him wonder who is nearby. Nearby, debris flies everywhere as a loud noise echoes through the forest. Our guy is there swinging his blade with maximum force. He strikes 3 targets with blinding speed. One horizontal strike cleanly slices through a tree. Behind him, the patriarch stands quietly to watch the training. Hak crosses his arms and evaluates the technique. And he frowns as he realizes something is deeply unsettling about it. This is not the legendary heaven-severing sword technique meant to split skies. Instead, it is a bloodthirsty style designed solely for slaughter. So he worries Mumayong will lose himself to his rage. That's when Mumayong screams and raises his sword high. He swings the blade down and slices through a massive tree. The force of the strike shatters the wood. Cut pieces crash to the ground, leaving him alone in the clearing. Now he stands there panting to catch his breath. Hak walks up and mocks him for venting on trees despite his grand claims. Then he demands to know what makes him so angry. Walking away, Mayong confesses he is weak. He admits he fails to protect his people and must become stronger. That's when Hak questions who exactly he means by his people. Mayong explains he means the people he wants to care for in the Cheon clan. This realization strikes Hak hard as he stares intensely at him. He recalls the moment Mayong spoke about his people. Meanwhile, our guy remains bowed as the conversation shifts. Then Hak asks if he meant those he wants to protect instead of those serving him. Hak admits he was narrow-minded and calls this realization a good thing. Next, their hallway encounter comes up. He mentions how Mayong claimed to mimic a complex sword art by chance. Fluidly unsheathing his sword, he reminds Mayong of his claim to mimic any technique shown to him. Mayong tenses as Hak levels his blade. Hak challenges him to prove those words immediately. Stunned by the sudden challenge, Mayong stays silent before asking for clarification. Hak demonstrates his sword technique and explains he created the dragon claw rain for his unit. But he never taught anyone the next form. This secret style borders on severing heaven and slashing men. Now he asks Mayong if he wants to learn this secret art. Hak promises to show him what happens when someone touches a dragon's reverse scale. Readying his weapon, he prepares the final form, the dragon rage. Mayong simply watches as the devastating technique begins. The reverse scale flies forward. This heavy strike whips up a massive wind that nearby disciples notice. A disciple carrying a bear asks if that is a whirlwind. That is the exact direction of Mayong. Turning around, the leader orders his group to finish hiding the clothes before the banquet starts. He pulls out a bottle of Sohai's poison. This substance paralyzes Mayong for a full day. Its symptoms mimic heavy drunkenness, so even a pharmacist will notice. Staging the scene to look like he passed out from drinking finishes their job. The disciples march through the forest, confident nobody will believe a deadbeat's claims of an attack. Assured their disguise is perfect, they decide it is time to make their move. Meanwhile, Mayong stands in absolute silence as he processes the technique. He quietly wonders if his own uncle truly intended to kill him. Looking at the fallen trees around him, he realizes the truth. Mayong contemplates the raw destruction left by the reverse scale slash. Hak steps forward and demands to know if he grasps the gap between that technique and the dragon claw rain. He explains that expert swordsmen view their blades as limbs, while the dragon claw rain targets that very psychological crutch. When a reckless fighter charges in, the technique forces their weapon to abandon them. Mayong swallows hard, realizing this marks the true summit of the dragon claw rain. Hak clarifies that while the move isn't invincible against top-tier masters, it holds a hidden trap that even they cannot avoid. He asks if Mayong understands the trick. Our guy eyes the sky, mimicking the reverse scale slash, and agrees. Hak asks if he can execute it. Looking at a splintered tree, Mayong asks if his uncle expects him to learn it instantly. He pivots to meet Hak's gaze and promises to master it before the banquet begins. Hak clarifies that he is really asking if Mayong can protect the Cheon clan. That question stops him cold, then a smile forms on his face. Mayong accepts the burden immediately and pledges to get the job done. Hak nods in approval at his resolve. As they walk, Hak notes the air shifting from the presence of hidden pests. Hak declares he is heading to the banquet hall first, and Mayong bows to see him off. Left in the silence, our guy shifts his focus to the shadows, ready to hunt down the intruders like a predator cornering its prey. One hidden man worries that Mayong spotted them. His partner tells him to calm down because Cheon clan trainees roam these grounds all the time. They descend from the trees, planning to wait for an opening to slip him the paralyzing poison. Mayong forces them to stop by demanding to know who they are. The intruders claim to be trainees who got lost looking for a spot to practice and ask for forgiveness. He calls their bluff, mocking them for pretending to be trainees while sporting such aged, worn faces. They see that the insult like a kicked dog. He clarifies that he knows every trainee in the clan by face and name, and they certainly do not make the cut. Seeing his chance, he declares he needs some sparring practice. He decides to beat their true identities out of them during the fight. The intruders share a look before the leader decides their plan remains the same. He orders his men to subdue the young master and dose him with the poison regardless of his accusations. Deep within the secluded Cheon clan training grounds, the atmosphere shifts. Defeated trainees gather, pushing their limits as if pulled by a magnet. Nung Ryowon sprints, swearing to take his sword back from the eldest young master. Myong-hak grunts under heavy iron weights, vowing that he will win the next rematch at any cost. A panicked trainee charges into the clearing, screaming for Mu Myong. The others ignore his frantic yells, locked into their training like machines. He catches his breath and shouts that the eldest young master just pulled a stunt nobody could see coming. Disciples wrestling on the dirt look up with obsessed eyes, demanding to know the details. One trainee watches the circus in disgust, telling them to get dressed for work, but they just point out that they saw something impossible. The silence snaps as steel clashes, shaking leaves loose from the branches. Mu Myong swings his blade with singular focus, channeling his entire weight into a precision strike. The blow lands with crushing force, leaving his opponent wide open. They trade fierce strikes in the clearing, blades locked in a lethal struggle. One more defeated opponent hits the dirt. Mu Myong slips past a guard and maneuvers behind the next guy. He drives his blade through the man's back, leaving him coughing in pure shock. That disciple groans on the forest floor as his life drains away. Standing over the screaming man, Mu Myong keeps his weapon ready while the foe cries out in agony. He calmly walks past the fallen bodies. One man lies unconscious while another kneels, struggling to hold his own weight. The survivor realizes with dread that Mu Myong is stronger than they thought and getting more dangerous every second. He grips his unfamiliar weapon, cursing that it isn't his clan's preferred saber and ruins his form. Grimly, he admits their disguise plan backfired and they severely underestimated the eldest young master. Mu Myong glances back and demands the man reveal his identity, noting his strong suspicion regarding their origins. The disciple raises his sword and claims a hunch means nothing without proof, insisting his identity remains a secret. Mocking the idea of proof, Mu Myong points out that only the Tang clan would act this way right now. The attacker gasps, caught completely off guard by the accusation. Everyone will reach that same conclusion, and that suspicion is proof enough, Mu Myong says. He flashes a mocking smile, thanking them because these actions ensure his unwanted marriage is officially off. The disciple grinds his teeth and chuckles, whispering that the eldest young master is still incredibly naive. Confident, Mu Myong draws his sword and mentions he has a good feeling about finishing this as he preps another strike. He lunges forward, bringing his blade down in a brutal arc. Mu Myong unleashes his reverse scale, slash with immense force. Bracing for impact, the disciple raises his wooden sword to meet the incoming blow. Their weapons collide, the heavy sound echoing through the forest and sending birds scattering into the sky. Silence returns to the woods as the dust settles. Deep in another part of the forest, a man checks a makeshift sundial on a dirt path. He notes the shadow moved a quarter notch, realizing 45 minutes have passed. Anxious, he wonders why his 3 men haven't returned and if they failed. The commander looks up, his suspicion mounting as he realizes his plans are falling apart. He resolves to destroy everything. He scrubs the evidence to protect his clan, fully aware that mere denials won't suffice. The bodies might be buried, but he knows search dogs will sniff them out eventually. Deep in the forest, a disciple scoffs in disbelief at the senseless murder of a maid, questioning if their peers have truly lost their minds. Another disciple marches through the woods and explains this is simply how the Tang clan enforces its law. He details how their poisons and hidden weapons kill on contact, leaving victims with no way to prepare or seek justice. Because of this, he notes that approaching the direct lineage is a death sentence, a rule that has never seen an exception. He recalls how people would scatter like leaves in the wind just to avoid brushing against them. The man admits he feels a flicker of fear about joining forces with such a ruthless clan, but he finds himself liking their prospects all the same. His companion agrees, noting the Cheon clan maintains a weird sense of fairness where even Mu Myong faces consequences for acting like a deadbeat. The others chime in, satisfied that the Cheon clan accepted even an old man like him. He insists they keep looking, calling the clan strange because Nung Ryowon is still breathing despite defying Mu Myong. He compares their luck to another clan, where he would have surely ended up as a trophy in the Red Plum Pavilion's latrine. Nung Ryowon cuts them off, warning them not, questioning how they managed to pull off such a stunt in someone else's territory. He grumbles that there is a limit to how much they can disrespect the Cheon clan. Turning to the trainee, he asks if they should assist Mu Myong, and the boy agrees, noting Mo Myong is their only hope against the Tang clan while everyone else is distracted hosting guests. Nung Ryowon wonders aloud how they can actually intervene. Lee Suk shouts to the disciples, declaring that he cannot stand by while the clan's prestige hangs in the balance. He demands they find the eldest young master to formulate a plan, while the others mutter behind his back that he is just a loudmouth looking for a spotlight. Parting the bushes, Lee Suk reminds himself that a crisis is just an opportunity in disguise. He grins, convinced that playing the leader will win back the commander's favor. He hatches a plot to grab the eldest young master, ready to trade him to the Tang clan the moment things go south. Dry twigs to coax a campfire to life. Then the man freezes and glances around, caught off guard by an unseen presence. Lee Suk sprints up the mountain path with heavy, labored breaths. He parts the thick foliage and gasps at the sight waiting ahead. Terror hits him like a physical blow as he processes the scene. A disciple calls out to ask why the head trainee is acting so. Ignoring the shout, this guy bolts away to escape the secret he just uncovered. He runs faster, terrified by the danger now tailing him. Suddenly, the Tang clan member drops from the canopy with a sword drawn for the kill. Disciples below look up in confusion, blind to the threat. Disciple in one bloody motion. Still running for his life, our guy tells himself he knew this disaster was coming. Lee Suk and his crew scramble through the forest. The realization hits him like a brick that someone watched him burn those clothes. The attacker locks eyes on his target and prepares to finish the job to silence the witness. He lunges with a heavy downward strike, but Myonghak blocks the blow just in time while reeling from the impact. The warrior looks stunned that Myonghak actually lets out a laugh. One trainee snaps back that they aren't just fodder, and his friend jokes that this guy is just like the naked trainee who got crushed by Mu Myong. Drawing his own blade, the man asks if they know the fame of the Cheon clan. He brings up the legacy of the heavenly dragon and elite material. Scoffing at their confidence, the warrior reminds them that they are still just trainees. He vows to show them the massive gap between a student and a seasoned killer. Unfazed, the group steps forward to challenge him to a 7-on-1 fight. The warrior strikes with lethal speed, dropping one trainee before anyone can react. He feels the strike land, but his confidence shatters when he realizes something is wrong. To his disbelief, the trainee blocked the killing blow in the chaos. Disciples surround the warrior from every side. The warrior chuckles while fixating on his next target. He grinds his teeth and looks down on them, promising a brutal lesson in true power. A short time later, the warrior passed out, face bruised and knocked cold. The disciples march back toward base like they just finished a training drill. Lee Suk complains about a knot in his stomach. He tells the others to head on while he stops to take a dump. Alone now, Lee Suk pokes at the smoldering pile of clothes with a stick in the middle of the woods. He realizes he missed something. Lee Suk inspects the suspicious clothes and realizes someone tried to burn them. So he pockets the garments to use as future leverage. Suddenly, a companion yells from the trees for him to hurry up. Lee Suk quickly hides the evidence and claims his stomach is acting up. But the companion groans and tells him to keep those nasty details to himself. Deep in the woods, another disciple agrees they must find the eldest young master. The group moves through the dense trees until one man suddenly stops. That's when he spots a strange glass vial lying in the dirt. Nearby, Our guy stands over a defeated disciple with his wooden sword. Night falls and the grand palace goes quiet before the big event. And a loud announcement echoes as Cheon Wigong steps forward. The powerful leader marches down the hall flanked by his attendants. He moves with a heavy presence, like he owns the entire world. Then the guests whisper in admiration of his handsome looks. Even the spectators on the balcony praise him as a true paragon of the sword. Cheon Wigong clasps his hands together to quiet the room. But then he welcomes the martial artists and thanks them for attending. That's when he announces a special guest before the feast begins. A herald loudly bellows the arrival of the lady of the Sichuan Tang clan. Shocked whispers erupt over this unexpected guest from a rival family. And the massive double doors creak open to reveal the visitor. An anxious guest wonders what her sudden arrival actually means. Sure enough, Tang Sohai steps inside looking like a legendary ice goddess. Cheon Wigong steps up and announces a formal marriage alliance to bind their families. And the crowd stands completely frozen with a million questions. Sian Hak sighs with deep disappointment. Hearing the announcement, Sohai smirks. She gloats that Cheon Wigang's official declaration seals the deal forever. But Cheon Wigong frowns at the empty seats of the Council of Elders. He wonders if his main family will ever truly unite. That's when Cheon Wigong turns to his attendant to demand the eldest young master's location. The attendant stammers that Mu Maiyong is nowhere on the grounds. Meanwhile, a disciple whispers to Sohai that the young master's absence means their plan worked. He reassures her that their hidden guards will stop him. Unaware of the plot, a voice raises to start the banquet. Inside, Cheon Wigong asks if Mu Maiyong is missing, and his subordinate confirms it. So Cheon Wigong stands up to address the crowd. He thanks the guests and fellow martial artists for attending. Then he promises that clan warriors will escort them past curfew. As he dismisses the crowd, a loud crash cuts him off. The patriarch gasps and looks toward the source of the noise. Shouts erupt from outside the building. Just like that, silence fills the hall as guests turn back like they just saw a ghost. The crowd whispers that the deadbeat young master has finally arrived. Sure enough, this guy strides forward with confidence, ignoring every single resentful glare. The crowd in the grand hall murmurs, questioning the identity of the mysterious young master causing this commotion. They point at the clan trainees tailing him like loyal guard dogs. Nung Ryowon breaks into a cold sweat and decides our guy has completely lost his mind. Myong Hak steps forward and orders the guards to sheathe their swords to avoid a bloodbath. As Mu Maiyong marches forward with unnerving calm, a voice announces him as the eldest young master of the Cheon clan. Cheon Wigang stares down in disbelief and demands to know who they are talking about. He scoffs at the idea that the skinny kid before him holds that title. Beside him, Sian Hak turns to confirm to his brother that this is indeed Mu Maiyong. Cheon Wigang gasps, unable to process this drastic transformation. He watches Mu Maiyong like he is seeing a ghost, struggling to comprehend how months away could change a man so much. He tries to figure out what happened during his absence to cause this shift. Mu Maiyong stands before Cheon Wigang with a new, quiet confidence. Addressing him as the eldest young master, Cheon Wigang demands to know why he is causing this scene. Mu Maiyong replies that he has an important matter to settle. Cheon Wigang in the eye, Mu Maiyong demands the immediate cancellation of his engagement. The banquet hall erupts in hushed murmurs as guests wonder if the eldest young master is actually defying the patriarch's orders. The patriarch demands an explanation for such an outrageous request. Mu Maiyong states firmly that the Tang clan tried to kill his maid, Wuliang, inside the Cheon clan grounds. He explains that they attacked him even after he identified himself as the eldest young master. Cheon Wigang listens in grim silence as the weight of the accusation hits the room. Mu Maiyong reveals that they used the chaos of his fight with their escort warrior to poison his maid, leaving her life on the line. Sohai jumps up from the banquet table and shouts that the maid soiled her cloak. At the table, Sohai argues she was already punished by their laws. She demands to know if Mu Maiyong is going this far over a mere maid. But Mu Maiyong glares back. She is not just a maid. He reminds Sohai that Wuliang is one of his own people. And just like that, Sohai grits her teeth and stays silent. Cheon Wigong watches the confrontation and realizes he knows nothing about this situation. He notes that updates about Mu Maiyong always get hidden from him. Addressing the room, Cheon Wigong declares that he respects the Tang clan's laws. Then, he acknowledges their maid initiated the conflict with forbidden contact. So he explains Mu Maiyong acted in self-defense since they cannot enforce foreign laws. Turning back, Cheon Wigong announces his decision to drop the maid issue. His calm, decisive look settles the dispute once and for all. Our guy calls out to Cheon Wigong, but Cheon Wigong cuts him off. He explains they cannot cancel a marriage alliance over a maid. At this, Sohai smirks like she has already won. But Cheon Wigong turns to Sohai and asks if she attacked Mu Maiyong knowingly. He warns her this could cancel the engagement and demands a careful answer. That is when Mu Maiyong smiles at this sudden opportunity. Immediately, Sohai denies the allegations. She claims she was aiming for Woolyong when Mu Maiyong stepped in the way. But a disciple speaks up, confessing he saw her target Mu Maiyong directly. So she demands proof and accuses the witness of lying. Leaning forward, she warns that any more charge. She declares she will hold anyone accountable for providing false evidence. Behind them, the disciples whisper in confusion about what perjury means. Myong-hak explains that it means giving false testimony in a formal setting. So Mu Maiyong meets her challenge head-on, realizing words are not enough. He commands his men to bring in his prepared proof. And just like that, So Myong-hak gets dragged in and thrown down before the assembly. This sudden arrival completely shifts the balance of the room. Suddenly, Sohai freezes, realizing her plan is falling apart. The arrival of the prisoner is a development she never anticipated. So Myong-hak looms over the bound captives and identifies them as the ones who attempted to poison him. He tells the room that these men infiltrated the group by posing as trainees. Cheon Wigang demands a clarification, clearly caught off guard by the accusation. Myong-hak details how he forced the intruders to drink the contents of a suspicious medicine bottle they carried, leaving them completely incapacitated. He theorizes the culprits crafted this scheme to ruin the eldest young master's reputation and keep him from the banquet. Nung Ryowon jumps in to point out the plot failed because the eldest young master trains daily without touching alcohol. He vows to stake his life on this fact and offers every trainee present as a witness. Cheon Wigang falls into a tense silence, weighing the testimony as he plans his next step. Sohai speaks up from her seat and calmly demands hard evidence for such bold claims. Lee Suk scoffs at her audacity, and Myong-hak asserts that he has the proof she requested. Myong-hak explains the medical hall identified the substance as a complex anesthetic produced exclusively by the Sichuan Tang clan. Whispers ripple through the crowd like wind through dead leaves as spectators wonder if the Tang clan is truly backing Mu Maiyong. Some attendees call for the immediate annulment of the engagement. Mu Maiyong turns to Sohai and asks if the evidence tastes bitter, determined to use this momentum to shatter the engagement. Sohai hides her face behind a fan and lets out a mocking chuckle. She dismisses the claims as pure absurdity and tells the room she is amused. She argues that leaving drugs behind is not the same as attempting to use them on Mu Maiyong. As the crowd murmurs, she questions if the intruders intended to poison themselves. Sohai points out that anyone could acquire trainee uniforms and suggests an inside job within the Cheon clan. She questions how the Tang clan could have possibly obtained those clothes after arriving only today. Smirking, she calls the Cheon clan's medical report into question and demands a verification from the superior Tang clan medical experts. Mu Maiyong grits his teeth in shock, wondering how Sohai managed to flip the narrative so quickly. She peers over her fan and asks if the room has anything else to discuss. One trainee steps forward to point accusingly, shouting about his chest wound and his companion's back injury. He cuts off the trainee, demanding to know why a man should care about a trainee being beaten by a mere intruder. She dismisses the warrior's injuries as a trivial distraction from the marriage alliance. He orders his men to investigate these minor complaints in separate, private inquiries. The mood in the room shifts as the momentum slips through their fingers like sand. Sohai snaps her fan shut, instantly silencing every person in the hall. Agreeing with her, Cheon Wigang mandates separate investigations into the men's identities. He dismisses the medical hall's findings as mere opinion rather than hard fact. Cheon Wigang demands any tangible proof linking the intruders to the Tang clan. Mu Maiyong remains silent, offering nothing to substantiate the claims. Cheon Wigang threatens them with severe consequences for recklessly framing the Tang clan. He labels any attempt to sabotage this marriage alliance a capital crime. Cheon Wigang promises to either disown Mu Maiyong or hand him over to the Tang clan for judgment. He glares down at them and demands one final time to see some evidence. Mu Maiyong realizes the situation has spiraled into a total disaster. He lacks any concrete proof to present right now. The guy knows that a later investigation won't stop the marriage, leaving Wuliang out of reach forever. He needs a solution immediately to avoid a fate worse than death. Suddenly, Lee Suk interrupts the tension by complaining about a stomachache. Lee Suk asks for permission to run to the latrine. Mu Maiyong blinks, stunned by the sheer absurdity of the interruption. He watches Lee Suk act like he is on a leisurely stroll instead of standing in a death trap. Mu Maiyong freezes as a sudden realization hits him like a freight train. He locks eyes on the man's clothing and analyzes the fabric. The design matches the distinct uniform of a Tang clan warrior. Lee Suk strolls in and says he is glad to run into him. Mu Maiyong calls him out and asks if he is hiding something, leaving Lee Suk to stammer while asking for clarification. Mu Maiyong glares and questions why the Tang clan warriors attacked them and if he saw anything beyond that hill. Lee Suk denies it and insists he saw nothing. Mu Maiyong walks through the forest, glances back, and sternly warns him to drop any thoughts of betrayal. Sweating nervously, Lee Suk claims he would suffer chi deviation without his loyalty and begs him not to suggest such things. Mu Maiyong stays silent while the trainees move ahead, one of them urging the group to hurry after receiving a signal. Mu Maiyong grinds his teeth and trembles, memories of betrayal fueling his focus. He curses Lee Suk internally for folding so easily. He decides that no matter what Lee Suk saw, he will force him to reveal it all. Addressing Cheon Wigang, he claims he told the truth, but insists there is more to the story. Mu Maiyong kneels before Cheon Wigang, taking all the blame and begging for the trainees to be spared. Cheon Wigang refuses, declaring that interfering with the marriage is a severe crime and all 7 trainees will face punishment. Lee Suk gasps, blindsided by the mention of 7 trainees. The other 6 stand in a tense line, their faces grim. Lee Suk shrieks, realizing he is counted as the 7th accomplice. Mu Maiyong asks if Lee Suk will face harsher punishment as the ringleader. He panics, wondering when he ever led such a plot. Cheon Wigang coldly confirms that if the accusation holds, he will face execution. Lee Suk screams in terror as the reality hits home. He looks down with cold sweat dripping, cursing in silence. He brought the clothes the Tang clan warriors burned, planning to trade them for a position as a new disciple. He panics, realizing that if he doesn't present this evidence, he will get executed along with the others. Mu Maiyong declares that he and the 7 trainees are in the same boat, begging for all 8 of them to be killed together. He specifically targets head trainer Lee Suk, claiming the man will suffer chi deviation without his loyalty, and requests that he be buried alongside him in the most painful way possible. As Mu Maiyong describes the torture, Lee Suk remains stunned. Lee Suk wails in terror, screaming that they would have to slice their own bellies open. He suddenly shouts that he possesses crucial evidence to present. Mu Maiyong smiles, satisfied that his plan unfolds exactly as he intended. Cheonjuang stares in silent confusion, caught completely off guard by this sudden shift. Sohai watches the spectacle unfold while peering over her decorative fan with deep suspicion. Lee Suk struggles for words as he presents a bundle of burnt fabric to the assembly. He explains that while climbing the hill, he witnessed Tang clan warriors burning those items. He asserts that the charred remains match the clothing worn by the disguised intruders. The 2 captured intruders sit bound on the floor, unable to escape the mounting accusations. Lee Suk notes that the culprits failed their ambush and tried to destroy the evidence. He claims he witnessed them and that they injured 2 trainees to silence him. Sweating nervously, Lee Suk presents the burnt bundle and begs for forgiveness for his delay, explaining he needed to verify the facts. He concludes his report to the gathering. The trainees weep in remorse, calling out to apologize to the head trainee for their past arrogance. The commander marches forward in silence, his presence dominating the room. He suddenly strikes one trainee with a palm blow that sends him crashing into the ground. Sohai stands before the kneeling Lee Suk and the remaining trainees, looking down at them in total silence. She examines the retrieved garments while seething with anger at her subordinates for bungling the task so badly. She points out that while the clothing belongs to her clan, it provides no definitive proof of a break-in. Mu Maiyong immediately fires back. He leans in to threaten her, explaining that the Cheon clan's tracker dog, Thunder, will easily follow the scent directly to the culprits. Sohai falls silent, unable to offer a counterargument as the trap closes in. She knows her clan's specialized hounds leave no trail uncovered, meaning the tracker will expose them regardless. Mu Maiyong stretches hand and orders Sohai to hand her the antidote, for an exchange that he wouldn't release their dog. He warned her that if their dog exposed their shameless lies, her and the Tang clan be able to handle Maki and disgrace, as Mu Maiyong ordered her to hand the antidote quickly. Sohai got mad and asked if Mu Maiyong willing to make an enemy of the Tang clan over a mere maid. But Mu Maiyong dismisses it as he ordered her to hand it, causing Sohai to get more infuriated. Elder Tang slams the table, his power surging as a pink aura radiates from his body. The observers gasp, whispering that this might be the legendary purple cloud flame chi, an aura only masters beyond the peak realm possess. Elder Tang furiously demands to know why the Cheon clan treats their guests so poorly. He questions if this is a public tribunal and why their lady is being treated like a common defendant. Unleashing his full force, Elder Tang declares that no one has ever dared to disrespect their sect and lived to tell the tale. Cian flares his own immense power in response. The onlookers gasp again, realizing Cian also wields the purple cloud flame chi. They whisper in excitement, recognizing the clash of two masters. The crowd watches the rare clash of flame chi like they are witnessing history in the making. Cian delivers a final, chilling threat to silence the room. Caught off guard, Elder Tang cries out in pure shock. Cian surges forward, pinning his opponent down with overwhelming pressure. Guards draw their swords to contain the chaos. Every security member present unsheathes their weapon, bracing for a brutal fight. The banquet hall descends into a suffocating, dead silence as the guests freeze in place. One observer watches the scene unfold, wondering what drove the Tang clan into such a state of madness. Cheon Wigang stands silent as his power wraps around him. He commands Elder Tang to lower his anger, asking how a formal engagement can be broken by one side without a grave error. Still cloaked in his power, Elder Tang scoffs at the question, suspecting the Cheon clan of plotting the annulment all along. Calmly, Cheon Wigang apologizes and asks for forgiveness if his words carried that meaning. A strange phenomenon shifts the air as immense power gathers in the hall. Spectators on the balcony murmur in confusion at the sudden atmospheric change. Vibrant, swirling energy floods the chamber, signaling that a major technique is active. With a sharp ring, the legendary blade leaves its scabbard. A massive strike erupts from the altar, tearing toward the ceiling right before the leaders. The onlookers stare in disbelief, questioning if the fabled heavenly five-bladed rainbow sword is truly before them. Memories of the patriarch wielding the blade at the profound realm flash through their minds. Cheon Wigang issues a cold final warning, telling them that everything has a limit and they should not test his patience further. The grand assembly fills the hall as a crushing weight slams down onto the room. Cheon Wigang signals for Cian to listen, and the man immediately snaps to attention. This guy orders an investigation into the clothes found on the trainee. He commands his men to drag in every relevant person for separate questioning and demands they cross-reference every word spoken. The suspects shake like leaves in a storm under the threat of the upcoming interrogation. Investigators wait in the wings like hunters ready to spring. Cheon Wigang demands a complete review of every statement to uncover the truth and halts the marriage alliance until they find it. Elder Tang brushes off the order, thinking his own sect has enough power to wipe the Cheon clan off the map. That's when the air in the room shifts. Something massive is about to happen. Guards groan as their strength vanishes under the immense pressure, realizing that defiance is impossible. Even the thought of resisting feels like a sin. Everyone in the room loses their will to fight as Cheon Wigang's martial prowess suffocates the space. Sohai turns pale and falls silent, wondering how the situation spiraled out of control. She views the chaos as a perfect opening to crush the orthodox factions and march into the Central Plains, swearing to pay back this humiliation 10,000 times over. She calls out to Cheon Wigang and asks if the Cheon clan is truly a martial family, drawing the sharp attention of Mu Maiyong and Maiyong Hak. Cheon Wigang confirms it with a nod. Sohai smiles awkwardly and proposes a duel to decide the outcome. She turns to Mu Maiyong and asks if he agrees, but he snaps back with annoyance and demands the antidote instead. A hand holds up a glass vial, dangling the cure in front of him. Sohai hides a smirk behind her fan, offering the antidote as a prize if Mu Maiyong wins the fight. Her gaze hardens as she threatens that the maid will die tonight if they refuse. She warns that breaking the engagement means a bloody war between their factions that will pile up bodies. She urges them to accept the duel to avoid a massacre. Mu Maiyong listens in silence, a bead of sweat tracing his jaw as he weighs the threat. Claiming to be far too frail for combat, Sohai announces that her escort warrior will fight in her place. The hulking warrior steps into the center of the hall, acting like he owns the floor. She challenges the Cheon clan to pick a champion, noting that anyone can step up if the eldest son isn't man enough to handle it. Cheon Wigang shifts in his seat and reminds everyone that a martial family doesn't settle every dispute with blades. He declares he must first determine if a duel is appropriate for an engagement matter. Mu Maiyong turns to Sohai and firmly demands she keep her promise. He then addresses Cheon Wigang to request permission to accept the challenge. The clan leaders watch the tension from their elevated table like judges at a sentencing. Cheon Wigang stares in disbelief and questions how Mu Maiyong could possibly survive an elite Tang clan warrior. Cian Hak calmly intervenes and advises his brother to simply observe for now. Caught off guard, Cheon Wigang turns to his brother in complete surprise. Cian Hak promises an explanation later and asks him to trust Mu Maiyong. Cheon Jiwang falls silent, watching the courtyard while he reflects on the request. He considers his son a lazy, weak, and selfish good-for-nothing. He laments that these flaws have left the boy completely alone without a single ally. He wonders if trusting such a person is just setting himself up for failure. Meanwhile, the other disciples stand in anxious silence, waiting for the leadership to move. Cheon Wigang weighs his options before finally delivering his verdict. Cheon Wigang announces to Sohai that they accept the duel, declaring Mu Maiyong as their representative. The sudden decision leaves Mu Maiyong stunned while Sohai offers a subtle, knowing smile. Disciples clear away the tables and chairs at the command of the leaders. Elder Tang watches the arena and notes the two fighters seem perfectly in sync. He asks Cheon Wigang if any other pair could be as well matched, but he receives only silence in return. Sohai turns to her warrior and politely tells him to do his best. The man blinks, clearly surprised by her sudden encouragement. She leans in close and asks if he knows the rules. She whispers that any accidents during a duel are exempt from liability. She adds with chilling precision that she would remain devoted even if her husband lost an arm. The announcer stands ready and looks toward the balcony to begin the proceedings. Both combatants step onto the center floor and face each other under the guards' watchful eyes. The announcer bellows for attention, projecting his voice across the hall to command absolute silence. Mu Maiyong assumes his stance and slowly draws his blade while his focus sharpens like a viper ready to strike. The announcer declares the start of the decision duel. Standing firm with a hand on his hilt, the warrior prepares to engage. The announcer gives the signal. Mu Maiyong lunges forward and unleashes a sweeping slash. He drives his blade in a clean strike straight at the warrior. This opening blow forces the warrior to block immediately. Mu Maiyong grits his teeth as he struggles against the weight of the impact. The warrior closes the gap with blinding speed. He fixates on his next move while tracking his target. A swift horizontal slash slices through the air. Mu Maiyong scrambles to adjust his stance and parries the low sweep. Their blades collide, sending a heavy vibration through both weapons. Mu Maiyong draws his sword and charges it with a powerful surge of force. He clashes directly with his opponent, locking weapons to test their strength. Planting a foot firmly, he slides backward to absorb the exchange. The warrior leaps away, desperately trying to regroup. Refusing to grant any breathing room, Mu Maiyong launches himself into the air. He lands back in the arena and draws his weapon to restart the exchange. The crowd gasps as the warrior unleashes his sword chi, pouring his full power into the blade. Onlookers whisper about why he shows such intensity against a supposed good-for-nothing. Mu Maiyong remains unfazed and calmly prepares his own weapon. He smiles, already seeing through the opponent's technique. With absolute focus, he prepares to shatter the warrior's confidence. Mu Maiyong draws his sword as the crowd watches like he is the main character. The opponent mirrors the move with intense focus. Mu Maiyong shouts for his enemy to step up. He lunges forward to build momentum, driving his foot into the ground. He charges down the hall straight at his adversary. The warrior meets him head-on with a heavy, cutting strike. They clash blades, and the impact sends sparks showering across the floor. Our guy realizes this is a top-tier swordsman capable of lethal sword chi. Their fight escalates into a blur of lightning-fast strikes. He admits silently that his opponent holds the upper hand. A strike grazes his face, but he manages to dodge the blade. He swings downward in a concentrated strike, channeling his power into the arc. He sees the warrior is overconfident in controlling the flow of battle. Forced onto his back foot, he braces his hand against the floor to regain his balance. They collide again, the impact erupting between their blades. The warrior takes the opening and kicks Mumayong's chin, sending him stumbling back. Diving from above, the warrior launches a fierce downward attack. Mumayong raises his blade to parry the assault. He realizes his foe is becoming careless in his hurry to finish the fight. Planting his foot, he shifts his weight forward. The warrior dashes past him and lands a counterattack that forces Mumayong to scramble away. The warrior anticipates his trajectory and moves to intercept. Their blades crash together, both men pouring every ounce of strength into the struggle. Mumayong grits his teeth and channels his inner energy to hold the heavy block. The warrior realizes Mumayong is aiming for his arm. They shove off each other and spring back to create distance. Mumayong wonders if he truly aims to sever that arm to end the fight. He slides across the floor and settles into a low, defensive stance. Mumayong lunges forward at blinding speed to close the distance. His opponent swings in a wide arc, daring him to try and cut it off. The warrior watches in silence, waiting for the perfect timing. Their blades meet with a sharp ring as the opponent mocks him for trying the same trick again. He strikes Mumayong hard and taunts him. The opponent calls him weak and stupid while laughing like a man who has already won. He swings his blade down to sever Mumayong's arm and sword in one blow. Cheonwigang watches the fight with Seonhak, weighing the nature of perception and half-baked opinions. The patriarch recognizes that his own past assessment of their opponent is just a flawed guess. He watches the man attack like a rigid wax figure, realizing that believing you know an enemy is the exact moment you lose your edge. The patriarch turns to the escort warrior to ask if a single past exchange really gives him full insight into Mumayong. The opponent lunges with a massive, sweeping slash that tears through the air. Mumayong reads the trajectory and slides past the blade with the grace of a shadow. He counters instantly, slicing across the opponent's chest before the man can process the movement. Spinning on his heel, Mumayong surges forward and kicks up a gale of wind. He channels his focus into one final, crushing strike. Cheonwigang stares in total disbelief as the power of the blow rips the sword from the opponent's grip. The man collapses to his knees in agony as the sheer force of the defeat humbles him. Seonhak announces the match is over, privately praising Mumayong's skill for winning without needing his ultimate technique. Both the warrior and Mumayong look stunned by the quick decision. Sohai goes pale, her jaw hitting the floor as the reality of the loss sets in. Mumayong reaches out his hand and demands the antidote he was promised. Sohai glares at him, teeth gritted in pure frustration. Mumayong turns and stumbles down the corridor, struggling to keep his legs under him. He staggers forward with each step, feeling heavier than the last. Cold sweat pours off him as he realizes his condition is spiraling. The strain of the duel forced his governing vessel open, and now Rogue Sword Chi wreaks havoc on his internal flow. Blood drips from his nose as the blocked-in energy begins to paralyze his meridians. Mumayong feels his energy flow reverse as his vision darkens to a blur. He stumbles and crashes hard onto the floor while losing consciousness. The poison takes hold, draining his strength into nothingness. Even as he fades out, our guy clings to the thought of delivering the antidote to Wuliang. The disciples swarm the scene in a panic. Two elders drop from the rafters like hawks towards him. Mumayong hits the floor, unconscious and drained from pushing past his breaking point. Cheonwigang kneels down and checks his pulse, flooding the boy's body with internal energy to scan the damage. The elders hover over him, faces grim as they track the internal blockage. Cheonwigang identifies the culprit. Unprocessed elixir energy trapped in the dantian, acting like a ticking time bomb. He knows the meridians will rupture and the dantian will shatter if he doesn't purge the backflow right now. Cheonwigang turns to Seonhak and orders him to end the banquet. Seonhak accepts the command with a bow. Cheon Wigang continues his instructions, telling him to treat the Tang clan warrior and escort the guests to their quarters with high priority. Handing over a small vial, he tells Seonhak to deliver the antidote to the maid. Seonhak, blood leaking from his mouth as his condition slips toward collapse. Qi deviation is a death sentence, tearing through the dantian and meridians until the mind breaks. Survival depends entirely on immediate intervention. The patriarch focuses his strength, driving a massive stream of energy into our guy's limp body. He works to suppress the backflow and force the rampaging qi back into its proper channels. This level of control demands impossible precision, and even a transcendent master risks failure. He must also dissolve the freezing yin energy that is clogging the meridians before it causes permanent damage. The delicate treatment continues, with the room vibrating under the strain. Cheon Wigang's Hongun flame qi hangs heavy in the air, long after the guests vacate the hall. Outside, the crowd mills under the red lanterns, trading rumors about the display. The commander watches them and notes that the young master's true state contradicts every whispered story. He concludes that a marriage alliance isn't worth the risk of angering the Central Plains sections. Sohai stares at the ground, disappointed by the sudden turn of events. She whispers Mumayong's name, promising herself they will cross paths again. The Tang clan treks through the courtyard under heavy guard. A fluffy red dog charges out of the shadows, barking wildly at the procession. Woolyun gasps, her face pale as a memory hits her. The maid drops her plate, meat and vegetables scattering across the ground. Guards force her to join the procession, marching the prisoners away under heavy guard. Cheon Wigang stands alone in the center of a silent hall. He lingers at the end of the chamber, lost in thought. Seonhak approaches and asks if his brother is all right. Cheon Wigang says nothing as they pace through the hall. Seonhak questions the decision to force an engagement with the Tang clan despite the urgency of Mumayong's treatment. He argues that calling off the engagement created unnecessary enemies. Cheon Wigang disagrees with a firm shake of his head. This leaves the uncle confused, and he asks for an explanation. Turning his back, Cheon Wigang clarifies that the Tang clan was not summoned for Mumayong's health. Seonhak demands to know the real reason behind the move. Cheon Wigang admits he needed the Tang clan's influence to keep Mumayong safe. Stunned, Seonhak asks who threatens his nephew. Cheon Wigang asks if his brother has noticed the hidden dangers, but Seonhak only offers a blank look. A soft smile forms on Cheon Wigang's face as he recalls how long it has been since his son looked him in the eye. He mentions that Mumayong seems to have finally found a friend. Seonhak watches him with a mix of shock and worry. Cheon Wigang announces he is finished and walks away. Seonhak stands rooted to the spot, noting how long it has been since he saw his brother smile. He observes the patriarch's mood like a man who has finally shed a heavy burden. Cheon Wigang pauses at the exit and invites Seonhak to share a drink for the first time in years. He admits he wants to get drunk tonight. The uncle stares in surprise, then agrees to the plan. They walk out of the hall together as evening falls. As they stroll through the estate, an associate praises their successful efforts, calling them legends in the making. The voice claims their names will be etched in history as immortals. The next morning, the stray dog, Thunder, plays in the courtyard. Wawang calls out to the dog, who barks in delight. Thunder growls, and Woolyong slowly opens her eyes. Confused, she wonders if she is in the medical hall. She sits up in bed, clutching a wooden box to her chest. Wawang rushes into the room carrying a basin of water and cries out in relief that she is finally awake. Wawang demands to know if Woolyong realizes how many days have passed. Woolyong asks about her circumstances and why she is in the medical hall. The maid stares back and asks if she truly remembers nothing at all. Wawang explains that Tang clan poison nearly ended her life. Woolyong drops her gaze in silence as the weight of the news hits her like a physical blow. The maid reveals that Mumayong risked everything to secure the antidote. Woolyong gasps and questions in disbelief if he really put his life on the line for her. Wawang hesitates, but Woolyong demands the truth immediately. She describes how Mumayong collapsed with blood pouring from his nose after dueling the Tang warrior. She adds that he fell into a state of qi deviation, and Cheonhak only just saved him. Stunned, Woolyong sprints toward Mumayong's location while questioning his motivations. Wawang shouts after her that he broke the Tang clan engagement to save her. She explains that the Cheon and Tang clans are now bitter enemies because of that decision. Woolyong runs on, wondering how her lowly existence could cause such a massive disaster for the entire clan. She reaches the door and slides it open while calling out for the young master. Her movement stops dead when she spots Seonhak standing beside Cheon Muriang's bed. Woolyong gasps in total confusion as she stares at the scene. She tries to make sense of his presence while her mind races. Seonhak turns slowly and pins her with a silent gaze. Meanwhile, Cheon Muriang remains unconscious on the bed like a ghost haunting the room. Woolyong stands frozen, silently questioning why he is here. Woolyong opens the door to find Seonhak waiting inside. He glares and demands to know her identity. She bows low in greeting while fearing he blames her for the broken engagement and his current condition. Then, Seonhak claims her arrival is perfect timing, leaving her stunned. Seonhak looked at Mumayong, stating that he'd show no sign of waking up, and told her that he would leave him in Woolyong's care. He then stood up, walking closer to her. Seonhak handed her a key, stating that was passed to the Heaven Dragon Library, and ordered her to give it to Mumayong when he wakes up. Because of that, Woolyong was surprised upon seeing the pass. She protests that she is just a lowly made unworthy of such treatment. Looking down at her, Seonhak asks whoever labeled her as such. He reminds her that Mumayong publicly declared she belongs to him. The patriarch steps up to assure her that she is the only person Mumayong possesses and instructs her to stop belittling herself. He promises that Mumayong will wake soon and urges her to stay calm. With that, Seonhak turns and leaves the room. Woolyong stares after him, questioning why she is considered his only person. She assumes he wants to replace her because her service is lacking. Suddenly, Mumayong bolts upright in bed, gasping for air and dripping with sweat. His body shakes as he struggles against the lingering nightmare. He finds himself standing on a rain-slicked roof in the middle of a storm. Bewilderment hits him as he realizes he is back in the burning courtyard. Rain hammers the fallen bodies while the temple vanishes into flames. An enemy charges through the downpour, screaming a death threat. Mumayong gasps as a cloaked assassin strikes with a drawn blade. He barely dodges the lethal blow, but the force of the impact shatters his guard. Staring at his empty hands, he realizes his weapon is gone. Gritting his teeth, he prepares to fight with his bare hands. He curses the demonic cult bastards as they retreat into the shadows. Memories of the Cheon clan's annihilation wash over him like a tidal wave. Fire consumes the courtyard, surrounding the corpses of his kin. Guilt gnaws at him for letting the demonic cult inside during the invasion. He steps through the wreckage, passing the lifeless bodies of his people. He curses the guards who failed to protect the clan. Another warrior lies dead on the cold ground, hand reaching out in a final, futile plea. He looks at the carnage and struggles to understand why so many had to die. He wanders through the ruins, blinded by the sheer scale of the slaughter. Blood stains the brick path beneath his feet. Discarded weapons clutter the path like trash on a city street. This once mighty Cheon clan fell far too easily to the demonic cult for their reputation. He remains silent as he observes the situation. He then looks at his uncle Jumsun, as he knew he was one of the few people who treated him well. He curses the demonic cult, as they doing this even to people who don't know a single bit of martial arts. Suddenly, a sound of clashing sword echoing outside, causing his attention to be shift. A voice could be heard groaning in pain as it was kneeling to the ground. Mumayong recognized that voice instantly. He quickly runs towards outside. He crawls through the heavy rain, fighting for every inch of progress. A scream pierces the storm and forces him to look up at the courtyard. An enemy warrior drives a brutal slash forward, cleaving his opponent in two before anyone can blink. The impact leaves absolute ruin behind, sending severed heads rolling across the slick stone floor. The victor stands in silence while the weight of the massacre hangs over the courtyard. Mumayong stands frozen in the downpour, watching the eldest young master meet such a pathetic end. This catastrophe feels like only the first act of a much larger nightmare. He watches from the shadows as executioners swarm their target, knowing his own time is running out. Those cloaked figures repeatedly stab the man on the ground with ruthless precision. Mumayong looks down, his heart heavy as he takes in the carnage. Closing his eyes, he struggles to block out the agonizing memories of his past life. He lies dying on the wet ground, terror and despair flooding his vision. Sneering as he asks what he was ever so afraid of. Mumayong grits his teeth, unable to process the betrayal. He shouts, demanding to know why he had to stab him in the back after a lifetime of devotion. His voice cuts through the rain as he demands to know why he invited the demonic cult into their home. Mumayong accuses him of destroying the entire clan and asks how he dares to act like the victim. He stands on the high ledge, screaming for an answer against the relentless storm. Gritting his teeth, he curses under his breath while the rain soaks his clothes. He thinks to himself that this man is nothing but a stupid bastard. Watching from above, he lets his anger simmer in the cold. He figures that if he went through the effort of creating such an incompetent fool, the guy should have just followed his orders. Peering down from the balcony, he spots a group of armed figures standing over the body in the courtyard. He stares in shock, wondering exactly who those people are.